And ready to go. Hot Mic with Honey Withrow underway. The Thursday edition has arrived. Glad you're with us. Live stream on YouTube. You can find us there. Search out OutKick. Hope you'll subscribe to the channel. Also streaming at OutKick.com and beyond. Plus, if you're listening to this great radio partner, we say thank you. Trey Wallace joins us. He is the senior reporter for OutKick, all things college sports, college football, and more. And Trey joins us in studio coming up in 20 minutes. Armando Salguero, also with OutKick, covers the NFL and does it very well every Thursday. He joins us in hour number 2. Plus Jim Nagy of the Reese's Senior Bowl. He's the executive director, and he'll jump in with the latest on college football. We'll find out who he's scouting and who's really caught his eye or his scout's eyes over the last couple of weeks. And Withrow brings his top 10 college football games of the weekend a bit later. Chad, good afternoon.
And college football is the gift that just keeps on giving. Every single day, something new. Whether it be unknowingly recorded audio or denials of allegations or non-denials, every single day we get a little bit of treasure from college football.
Yes, so we'll get into more of Jim Harbaugh, which has led the show for, 2 weeks now, it feels like? Not that long, but it's been a while. And we now go to the vocal Lane Kiffin, and now audio of Lane Kiffin being vocal with one of his players in the lawsuit that we dissected from DeSanto Rollins, who filed a lawsuit against Lane Kiffin and Ole Miss for $10 million seeking compensatory damages and $30 million for punitive damages against Kiffin for ignoring his mental health issues and instead kicking him off the team and not helping at the time who was a player for the Ole Miss Rebels football program. Racial discrimination was a part of this lawsuit that he brought, and recently Ole Miss and Kiffin filed a motion to dismiss said lawsuit. And this morning, Front Office Sports and A.J. Perez, they obtained an audio recording, roughly 40 seconds long, where we will hear DeSanto Rollins and mainly Lane Kiffin in a back and forth about his claim that mental health is keeping him away from the team, and it's not because he's sitting back silent for 2 weeks, not communicating with the program.
If you would have come here when you kept getting messages, the head coach wants to talk to you, and you saying, I'm not ready to talk to him.
I wasn't.
Well, what world do you live in?
I don't see why you gotta be disrespectful, honestly.
Get out of here. Go. You're off the team. You're done. See ya.
Because
See ya. Go. And guess what? We can kick you off the team. So go read your rights about mental health. We can kick you off the team for not showing up. When the head coach has to meet with you and you don't show up for weeks, okay, we can remove you from the team. It's called being a It's called hiding behind and not showing up to work.
Chad, hearing this for the first time earlier today and hearing it right now, I don't think Kiffin's in the wrong here. And that's with me acknowledging that mental health plays a factor in what this lawsuit is about, but also the fact that at some point you have to communicate. You can tell that he hasn't done that with his head coach of the program, Rollins. And the fact that we are in an age right now where you keep a recorder or your phone or something in your pocket, record this, and the coach in a one-on-one setting, it seems, can't be honest with the player about why he's ghosted the program for 2 weeks and how he feels about it. And we're also in an era, Chad, where P.J. Fleck can't have discipline by exercise, which is also something to point to. I hear this and I think this is a player in a program that totally wouldn't pick up the phone and or go to an office and tell someone, and instead just says he wasn't ready to go to his coach and tell him why he wasn't going to show up anymore. Yes, you could be kicked off the team. But I also think if you have mental health issues, that program would also help you with that. I don't think he's getting kicked off for that. He's getting kicked off for not doing anything for 2 weeks and expecting them to roll out the red carpet and feel sorry for someone who can't communicate what's going on in the moment and instead records said discussion. And this is leaked to Front Office Sports at AJ Perez, which is a great report today. That is 24 hours after Ole Miss and Kiffin asked for a dismissal of the suit. They filed in court. He's going to be crushed for this, Kiffin. But also, he's going to be crushed for it because it's just the groupthink mentality of hearing an F-bomb and what he says what he feels like that reaction has been from the 2 weeks that he missed, which is calling him, basically saying DBAP. DBAP.
Yeah, it's not the F word that's going to get him in trouble. It's the P word in today's society that people are going to be up in arms about, which I disagree with, because I'm with you, Hutton. I think Lane Kiffin is well within his right to go after a guy that is under his charge, that's one of his players, that refuses to respond to a head coach for 2 weeks when the head coach is asking to speak with him. I have zero issues with any of this. Now, I'm sure Lane Kiffin and people at Ole Miss are going to listen to this audio and play it back and think, man, I went pretty hard. I maybe should have phrased some things a little bit differently. But the overall message is not out of line. And the overall messaging of what he's getting at is not a big problem here. Look, this is a byproduct of when we go too far with players' rights. And don't hear this and think I'm saying, let's go back to the good old days where the coaches, would give them salt tablets and deny water to players, and I need some more junction boys out there. I'm not with that. I think the players should have some autonomy over things like name, image, likeness, and the ability to at least make money off name, image, likeness. I'm good with all of those things, right? And I'm good with them having more freedom to transfer out and not have to pay a 1-year penalty if they leave, if it's not working, if a coach is abusive to them or isn't giving them a fair shot or whatever it may be. But what we just heard in this video, and not what we heard in that audio clip, I should say, not what we heard there as much as a $40 million lawsuit from someone for violating their mental health rights, is the clip I just heard. I probably heard 10 times in a high school locker room from coaches. I didn't bat an eye when I heard any of that, especially if you refuse to talk to your head coach for 2 weeks. There is a softening of society that's going on, and it's bled into sports. And for every writer and everyone who wants to say the Jay Billises of the world, the players deserve to have every decision-making ability. They should do whatever they want, whenever they want. Take the power from the coaches and the administration. Give it all to the players. This is why you got to be more sober-minded about these things, because this is a symptom of that mindset. That a player is suing a school for $40 million for that because he was rightfully kicked off a team for not responding to his head coach for 2 weeks. To me, that's a problem. I got no big issue with this. I'm sure Lane Kiffin's going to play it back and someone's going to say, shouldn't have used that word, shouldn't have used this word, whatever. This is locker room stuff. Coaches talk this way. This is not some news bulletin for people who have ever been around sports at all. Hutton, I hear this, and I don't really bat an eye. And I think if anyone doesn't go talk to their head coach for 2 weeks, they're probably going to be met with the same attitude.
Well, but also he claimed in this suit that was filed in September that he was kicked off the team in March. But he is still technically on the team. He hasn't appeared in a game. Last year he appeared in 2 games as a redshirt sophomore. And he's still a member, technically, of the Ole Miss football program. But, I mean, here's the other thing to keep in mind, Chad, as I hear this. This is 42 seconds long, right? What has gone on between that recording, and the recording's got to be longer than that. That's just the clip. It's got to be, because it cuts off before, you hear anything else about how the chat ended. All he says is get out of here, but did he respond to anything? And how did the conversation start? Right? It just picks up in the middle of a conversation. I want to hear the details of the before and after, which I don't know if we will or not. If we do, Front Office Sports will have it. And I also want to know what led up to this, because as a part of this suit, he's alleging racial discrimination on part of Kiffin and Ole Miss, discrimination on the basis of disability or perceived disability on the part of Kiffin and Ole Miss, sexual discrimination on the part of Ole Miss, intentional infliction of emotional distress on the part of Kiffin, and negligence and gross negligence on the part of Kiffin and Ole Miss. So Lane Kiffin and Ole Miss respond, and they say that Kiffin is not liable for the intentional infliction of emotional distress, and then they argued the validity of said claims based on the fact that, I mean, if you say you have a problem and then you get, you ghost, and then you don't communicate, and you come back and you get kicked off of a team, how do you take that if you're Kiffin or another member of the football program, another coach, administrator, manager, whatever it might be? I don't know how you respond if you don't know what's going on based on the fact that he's just not showing up around the program in the offseason.
Well, if you can, we can only go.
How is that intentional?
We can only go with what we have. All right. If we get new information, new audio clips, detailed stories about other things going on at Ole Miss, then we will reserve judgment for Lane Kiffin in the suit based on those stories. But unless this player can produce the instances where a white player for Ole Miss decides to bail out on the program for 2 weeks and not explain it to anyone or not get back with the coach when he asks to meet with them, and then they're welcomed with open arms immediately back without being yelled at, without anything, without any reasoning, without any excuses, nothing. If he can point to that, then yeah, he's got a case that this is somehow racially motivated. There's racial discrimination. I don't understand the sexual discrimination part of it, but I'm sure that their lawyers are going to draft something. But I have a hard time believing that if a white player had done the exact same with Lane Kiffin, he wouldn't have been met with the exact same language and being told to GTFO when they couldn't speak for themselves on it. And now, if that's not the case, absolutely, then this player has a case with the lawsuit. But we haven't seen that yet. I guess we're going to have to wait until they present their case. But this being the case right now, this is the info that we have to go on, is this audio clip. I got no big issues with anything that Kiffin said or the way he handled it. I think 95% of coaches in major college sports, hell, 95% of coaches in high school sports, some middle school sports, may have handled the same way, maybe with slightly different language from a lot of coaches. Or worse. Yeah, absolutely. Amen, Hutton. Some of them would have used worse language in this whole exchange. So it wasn't much of an exchange. It was more, there was less back and forth and more just forth from Lane Kiffin in that audio clip. Yeah. So I hear that and don't really bat an eye.
And keep in mind, Ole Miss, in a statement released back in September in just response to this, whether or not they received a lawsuit, and they said at the time they had not, based on reports. They say that Rollins continues to receive all of the resources and advantages that are afforded to a student athlete at the university, and he was not removed from the football team. This was September. Chad, in terms of language and...
I do love, though, that in the audio he's saying, you're off the team.
You're off the team.
Get out of here.
Yeah.
That doesn't mean anything.
But it was never officially removed.
It's like when Dan Dockridge tells us that Bobby Knight fired him multiple times. One time for calling a kid twice in 1 week and breaking an NCAA rule. He said, I was fired for 3 days and then allowed to come back.
Chad, we'll get into more of this coming up throughout the show. But what do you make of Michigan's response to what could come down the road today from the Big Ten and what Tony Petitti could do in terms of discipline for Jim Harbaugh and his program versus what we're hearing from Purdue, Rutgers, and Ohio State?
Well, we're not
allegations.
We're not hearing anything from Purdue right now, but keep in mind this is all media that's being spoon-fed stuff on the Michigan side of things, where they're saying they have evidence. Again, that's key here. They presented evidence to the Big Ten that both Ohio State and Rutgers conspired against Michigan to present Purdue with signs going into the Big Ten championship.
And I know we haven't heard officially from Purdue. I'm saying the fact that we haven't is different than what Michigan has done.
Well, no, I'm going to read right now. This is Ryan Day's response to those allegations, okay? He was asked directly about it. Quote, "Nobody here did any of that. We went through and made sure we asked all the questions and got our compliance people involved. None of that came back at all. I can answer very strongly that did not happen. I'm getting ready to play the 22nd ranked team this is from Shiano, in the country at their place. They're 12-3. I think in their last 15 games, they're 15-1 in the month of November. I'm very confident in the way we handle our business. I'm not going to get into specifics that are not my issue. Less of a strong denial from Greg Schiano, very strong denial from Ryan Day. But the difference here in those two coaches and Michigan is Michigan's not denying a thing with Conor Stallions. It's not a single denial. The denial is coming from the university that's claiming that Jim Harbaugh had no knowledge of it. The denial is coming from Conor Stallions in his resignation saying, I didn't talk to anyone else about it. Not, to my knowledge, no one else knew about it. But for all of the dirt slinging that's going on from Michigan right now to try to CYA, I haven't heard them deny that Conor Stallions didn't do exactly what everybody has evidence of him doing, which is illegally off-site advanced scouting of opponents. That is illegal. Stealing signs is not prohibited in the NCAA rule book. What he did is. But I didn't think we were going to hear much from Ryan Day on this because, honestly, I thought it was probably true. But the fact he's so adamant it didn't happen, that's another strike against Michigan. And as long as they stay silent and they're the only ones not denying a thing, guess what everybody can assume? That photo we saw of Conor Stallions on the sideline in Central Michigan gear was, in fact, Conor Stallions, even though Central Michigan won't admit it. How's that investigation going, by the way, Hutton?
It's lengthy. Central Michigan is the NCAA. Trey Wallace talks college football with us next.
Quote, a good state champion caliber high school boys team would smoke the best team in the WNBA. Then this weekend, after the video was posted and the critics, of course, came for him, he doubled down on what he said, posting this on X. Quote, it's sexist to say women's basketball players aren't as good as men's. That was a question, obviously. It's my opinion, and I'm putting $1 million behind it. If I'm wrong, the WNBA team can take my money and make more from one game than they do for the entire season. Okay, so let's get into this because obviously there's a lot of people out there who are just assuming that Clay is being sexist, that he is trying to really punk the WNBA because, let's be honest, the ratings for the WNBA aren't great, which is exactly why Clay made the joke at the end of that. If you were to give them $1 million for losing the bet, that would be more than the WNBA would make regularly for one game under normal circumstances. But the fact remains that men and women biologically super different, and that's what he's talking about. We even look at a boys' high school basketball team and the makeup of their players, what they're able to do, their size, their skills, and look at the WNBA players who are oftentimes much older. They're professional basketball players, but still, the level of competition would not at all be on the same playing field. So, Chris, let's get into that. What is your take on this? The fact that people would say that, Clay, you're being sexist, when reality remains men and women, super different, even at very different ages, different places in their careers, there would be no matchup whatsoever.
I don't even think it's questionable. I love that Clay took it to him. I think a lot of times silence speaks louder than words. The Las Vegas Aces haven't said anything in response yet. Mm-hmm. So, look, you're right. I dug into the rosters, the Las Vegas Aces, and then, look, I've spent some time training at IMG Academy. I work with athletes at a school called Lou High, which is one of the top programs in the country. And we have guards 6'4", 6'5", 6'6". We're on the Aces. The tallest players are 6'3" and 6'4", and those are their bigs. So they don't even have anybody to really account for the bigs on the male teams. And I don't know that it's how in any way is this a sexist
question
thing to say. Yeah.
Well, I have a woman, I think, who will be able to help answer this question. She is super smart. She's super intelligent. I am a big fan of her. Everybody, you're also a big fan of her. We all are. It just has to be said. So let's go ahead and bring in the woman of the hour, Riley Gaines. Hello, Riley. I'm happy to see you again. I feel like I get to spend so much time with you these days.
I know, right? Very good to see you, and I will say it is rainy here as well, which just sucks.
Okay, so are you, I know the last time we talked, you were like bouncing all over the place. Where are you right now?
I'm actually in Nashville, but headed to New York today, so. I'll be on deck.
Okay, well, welcome. You get to go from rain to rain.
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. So, Riley, let's get into the topic that we were just discussing. Obviously, Clay being a little bit sarcastic in the way that he framed the question, but he's saying he's willing to make a bet that the WNBA champions, still being the champions, professional basketball players, would not be able to hold a candle to any high school boys basketball team in the country. Is he being sexist, or is he just speaking facts that men and women are very different in terms of what they are capable of athletically?
Boom. Right there. It's not sexist to say men and women are different. It, like you said, it's reality, it's truth, it's common sense, it's logic, it's reasoning. We all know it.
Sixth and Peabody, our location with Yeehaw Beer and Old Smoky Moonshine. Hot Mic with Hutton Withrow rolls on. Armando Salguero from OutKick will join us coming up in an hour from right now. NFL Week 10. Chad, football season always flies by, especially college.
Man, I was thinking
November's here.
just last night that those shows leading up to the first Thursday of college football season.
Yeah.
I was at the Tennessee-Virginia game right across the river here at Nissan Stadium. And that feels like a week and a half ago.
I was in Tuscaloosa. Yeah.
That happened.
Yeah, I know.
And here we are, 3 weeks left in the regular season for college football. That's it. 3 games left, Hutton. 3 games for everyone. Crazy how fast it's gone.
Yep. Trey Wallace joins us. He covers all things college football for OutKick.com, our senior reporter there. Trey, good to see you in studio, man.
It's good to be here. It's really depressing that we have 3 weeks left in the regular season, but, we're here.
I think we're going to have chaos over these 3 weeks, too.
I do, too. I think we're going to see multiple upsets. I think the CFP rankings are going to move around. The Michigan stuff, blah, blah, blah.
The question is the chaos going to be on the field or off the field at this point?
What have we seen? A lot of the season has been off-the-field stuff.
Yeah.
And the biggest – who would have thought coming into the season that the biggest story of 2023 is most likely going to be some junior-level analyst for the Michigan Wolverines? That's the wild part about this. It's not what's going on the field and all this stuff. It's a guy refurbishing vacuums out of his house and also at the same time stealing signals and going covert. It's crazy.
With Blake Corum on the LLC.
Yeah, that was weird.
You know what I mean?
Right. Like that.
I know.
That's also a felony, I'm pretty sure, if he didn't really know about it. He's claiming he had no idea it was on there. To put someone on an LLC, I think, is a felony.
Well, then Blake Corum came out and said, well, I found that at practice today. And it's okay.
Thank the media for alerting him.
Right.
I'm with you, man. The whole story, just more than just a junior analyst or whatever, right?
Yeah, and I think when we look back on it, so much pressure is being put on the Big Ten. Like the Big Ten was going to be in the spotlight this year because the Big Ten was really good from the top half. You go Ohio State, Penn State, Michigan. Hell, Iowa's hanging around. I'm not saying they're good, but I'm saying that they're potentially playing for a title game. So the Big Ten was always going to be a talking point this year. But nobody expected that talking point to be because of what's going on technically off the field. And so now we're sitting in a situation where it's like, okay, what do you do? And at this moment, Big Ten Commissioner Tony Petitri is sitting around and he is going over this with lawyers, trying to decide how we're going to punish the Wolverines. And I think there's a couple different options on the table, and I think we find out soon.
In the interest of making sure that our buddy Tim Brando will come back on the show with us, I do want to talk on-field stuff.
Yes.
And Timmy B, if you're watching, no, this is for you, buddy, because we're gonna get into on-field stuff.
We'll piss you off in about 5 minutes.
There you go.
I'm gonna kind of bleed one and the other, though. Sorry, Tim, on this one. Trey, do you think anyone at Ole Miss is worried about this lawsuit and the audio with Lane Kiffin that we opened the show talking about? And this comes on the cusp of them playing an enormous game this Saturday on the field with a chance to be the first team to beat Georgia in, 2.5 years down in Athens.
Pretty interesting that it comes out 2 days before they go to Athens. The audio does. Always about that timing in these aspects.
There's a reason for that.
Well, I think the timing is more about yesterday.
Well,
with them trying to have this dismissed.
Yeah, no, and I agree with you. I understand that, but still, you look at it the way things play out, and how stuff just appears. You know what I mean? It makes things interesting. But I do think if I'm Lane Kiffin, I go up to the press availability if there is one today. It's a Thursday, so there might be one final one today. He's going to get asked about it. He's not going to be able to comment on it because it's an ongoing legal thing. But Lane Kiffin would really want to say, okay, so what? This is what you hear in every single locker room. Dude, if people knew what Kevin Steele said to his Alabama players last weekend in that locker room, they would look at this Ole Miss situation and not blink an eye. So I think overall that we're sitting here, and sometimes as a society, I don't want to say soft because that's not the right word, because mental health is always, we always have to look towards that. We always have to figure out what the right way is to go about it, and I completely understand it. But you had a kid that didn't show up for 3 weeks, man. Yep. And when you got the coaching staff trying to get in touch with him, when you have assistants, analysts trying to get in touch with him, and then he just shows up, he's at Lane Kiffin's office. And by the way, he's recording at the same time, so you know that he's going into the interview or conversation with Kiffin probably with some kind of intentions in mind of maybe do I try to get something out of Kiffin that helps me? Like, that's how I would look at it. If I was going into a meeting with somebody and I'm sitting there recording them, why am I recording them? Okay, because I need something out of this. So
and you know it's going to be heated.
Right, and you know it's going to be heated because he hasn't been around the program. And by the way, a lot of people are asking, well, he's still involved in the program? Yes. Ole Miss kept his scholarship. They kept him on. He's just technically not really part of the football team, but they're still paying for his housing, paying for his meals, paying for him tutors.
All benefits are there.
Everything. But the biggest thing is he's not on the football field. And I get that the kid's aggravated and upset, and that's not lost on me. But for Lane Kiffin, whatever. Not a big deal to me. The language, if people are listening to this and they're like, oh my gosh, I am so offended by the language. Walk yourself into a locker room during a pregame or a halftime.
Don't play sports or don't watch sports.
Right, exactly.
Anybody who's actually offended by that language to me are probably people who either don't cover sports, have never played, don't want to watch it, don't care about it. Those are the only people offended.
Yeah, and it's – it's probably going on right now around college football. At this moment, somebody is getting yelled at.
It's nothing new. I mean, I don't think they can make the movie The Hangover right now.
No.
Which is why you're going to have the reaction to this. And if every locker room is going to sound like this, again, if I'm the Michigan fan, I'm using that because it's like, well, if we're saying everyone's doing it too, by the way.
Right.
I mean, again, it's the perception of what you're. yes. So we the three of us know the reaction to what this will be, right? Like the reaction to the audio.
Outrage.
No one's going to mention like, okay, what were the details leading up to that, and the communication level where he's admitted he wasn't ready to speak to the coach about anything. Again, it's a deeper story than just a 42-second clip.
Well, you guys brought it up earlier. It's like what happened. What happened in the 10 minutes before he started recording? What else is on the tape?
The 2 weeks before,
2 weeks. You never know. Kiffin could have sent him a darn text message and say, "Hey man, you doing okay? Everything all right? Love to see you in the office." So I'm just saying, there's more to this story. Don't jump to conclusions because of a 40-second audio clip where he uses 2 curse languages.
What do you make of the jump to conclusions about Caleb Williams' postgame this past week, crying in the stands with his mom, and then his nonchalant attitude and bored just demeanor?
Said he wanted to cuddle up with his dog and watch
bored
Netflix.
Demeanor, but he's also leaned up against a wall and then like leans down to then answer some reporter's
So you're talking about yesterday?
No. I'm talking about this
Saturday night. Yeah, okay. So no. Okay, yesterday he had a press gathering and he addressed this. But Saturday, we're going back to Saturday.
Just Saturday, just the reaction to what was postgame for Caleb Williams.
Overblown to the point where it gives people something to talk about. I'm so sick and tired of hearing about Caleb Williams and, he was upset and he was crying. Man, the guy just lost a massive game. His championship aspirations are out the window. These kids are working their rear ends off all week, all season, all summer, and then they know, okay, it's over. We're not going to play for a title. you know? And then you want to go, and it's like Caleb Williams said this yesterday, and I agree with it. Caleb Williams said he went up, he wanted to give his mom a hug. And then all of a sudden, you know what, he felt the touch of his mom. He was in the moment with his mom, and he broke down. How many times have all of us sat around here and we've had a moment with our mother and we just break down? It's not like we wanted to on purpose, but something happens. The kid put everything on the line. He lost a football game, and the Fox cameras, I'm not blaming the Fox cameras because that's what your job is supposed to do, is to follow the star quarterback on the field. But for people to come out and attack him and, oh, well, you know what, the kid shouldn't be crying in the stands, and how's he going to be an NFL quarterback if he's crying? That's a farce, and that's people trying to take things to a different level, and I think it's a joke. I think it's if people are talking about him not being able to be an NFL quarterback because he goes into the stands and he's upset about something, I ask you, you know, in the situation, okay, well, what was the right move? Could he just go up and give his mom a hug and that would be it? But I'm sure people would be attacking him if he just went and hugged his mom in the stands too. So it's a no-win situation, and he addressed it perfectly yesterday with the USC media. Caught in the moment.
How much do the reaction to postgame is about how we reacted to him with the fingernails?
Yeah.
With, I don't concern myself. I'm a wolf. I don't concern myself with sheep, talking about the Notre Dame fan.
The LOL to Max Duggan tweet.
Yeah. I mean, I think a lot of that, the response to Saturday is based on his response and his actions prior to Saturday.
I think it goes back to a year. I agree with you.
Right.
We're in two different situations.
But had that not happened, I think
it's a cumulative effect.
Yeah,
a lot of things.
I think the reaction's way different.
I think there's a lot of red
winner.
flags. I mean, I think he's going to be an NFL quarterback, but I wouldn't want to draft him because you look at everything with quarterback, and there's just some weird things.
It's a peculiar deal
with the fingernails and the F this with the and then the LOL you mentioned.
Chad, where we are.
I have a bigger problem with the I'm going to go snuggle my dog and watch Netflix. After a loss than I do with the thing with the mom, you know.
And where we are, guys,
someone's going to draft him, clearly, because of the talent.
Right.
But
the Heisman winner returns to go back-to-back, and that's not the storyline. That's very peculiar.
And that should be the storyline coming out of that game. But I don't disagree with anything you guys say. I actually agree with you. The fingernails, the dog thing, the post-game, and all that type of stuff. I agree with you 100%.
I think, Trey, his dad is a negative effect on him.
Yes.
With some of the things he's told the media about maybe we'll come back to USC if the wrong team is going to draft us. That's a mark against him, too. Even if he didn't say it, it's perceived it's coming from him and his camp.
Right.
And that's one I hear and think, really, dude? I mean, who are you? You haven't taken a snap in the NFL yet, and you're going to now dictate. Now, it worked out for Eli Manning.
I just think two different settings. You know what I mean? The post-game press, the post-game hug, and then everything else that's happened before that and whatnot, and then everything else that happened with this press conference, you know, after the game with his dog and all that. I just think you have to separate the two. That's all I'm saying. The mom moment, we've all had them. The post-game stuff, the guy was just down, is what it is.
And he's also in a program, Chad, that doesn't really embrace media coverage.
Doesn't have a damn defense either.
Well, look, we talked. You mentioned the S word earlier of soft. That's the one word that I can use to describe Lincoln Riley's teams at USC right now, and that's all of that kind of feeds into each other. I don't think it's just the one thing with him. It's a lot of different things, and it all kind of permeates from Lincoln Riley and that defense, not the offense of USC that hasn't been a problem. Penn State and Michigan this week. Let's talk on the field, Trey.
Yeah.
Penn State and James Franklin have a chance to sort of do the Lord's work here. Because everyone in the Big Ten and everyone nationally, they're going to be rooting for Penn State in this game. Do they have what it takes with a freshman at quarterback and Drew Aller to possibly get this done against a Michigan defense that has been outstanding all season?
By the way, I think the CFP committee and the Big Ten athletic director is also rooting for Penn State quietly to end this. Look, I do. I think Drew Aller is a good enough quarterback. I think the Penn State defense is good enough to shut down, try to shut down what McCarthy and they're going to do, with Corum at running back. I think this is one of those gut check games for James Franklin. It's always been about Franklin being able to win the big game, kind of like the same thing Lane's going into in Athens this weekend. So I feel like this is the opportunity where you just cause chaos, you cause controversy, and on the field, time they're playing, where they're playing. I think that's massive. And Michigan's going into this thing with it's us against the world. It's, okay, we're going to go in and we're going to win this, and we're going to really stick it to the Big Ten and the CFP and whatnot and everybody that's doubting them. But I think also you look at the situation where they're playing and how Penn State has been playing. I think Drew Rowler's good enough to stretch the field against Michigan, test that defense. I mean, I think Michigan's going to win the football game. That's just my opinion. But I do think this is going to go to the fourth quarter. I think it's a final possession type of game, or J.J. McCarthy pulls something out towards the end. But it would not surprise me if somehow James Franklin and Penn State rose to the occasion and shocked the college football world.
I also think, and Trey, if you're cool with it, we're going to keep you on one more segment since you're in here today.
Yeah.
Hutton, I also think that the perception of James Franklin being a guy who's been good but not great at Penn State and can't get over the hump against the best two teams in the conference, that rep gets exponentially better if he beats Michigan now. Why? This is the one people are always going to remember. We'll remember what Michigan is going through right now and what happened this year. Years from now, we'll say, oh, yeah, that's when the whole sign-stealing Conor Stallions thing was happening, and James Franklin at home kicked his ass in that game. He's going to get a lot of memories about this performance in this game. And here's the other one, too. It works both ways. They go out there and look as inept offensively as they did against Ohio State, against Michigan, and lose at home. People are going to remember that just as much as well.
And not only remember that, if James Franklin beats Michigan, he's doing something Ryan Day can't do. And there's a bigger storyline there if the suspension happens after Penn State for Ryan Day. I want to jump into that next with Trey Wallace.
What you're experiencing is the bold taste of a Southern legend. Old Smoky Moonshine and Whiskey. Authentic Tennessee mountain-style spirits. We believe in crafting flavors that were born from tradition but defy expectation. And pioneering a new experience with every sip. Because if it doesn't do this, it ain't this. Old Smoky Moonshine and Whiskey. Come on.
Welcome into OutKick the show. I am Clay Travis, your fearless leader. I am going to continue to argue that sports is one of the great unifying forces in all of American life. ESPN is a sinking ship. Democrats are now the party of the white, woke college graduate.
We live in a land of participation trophies.
You gotta lean into the turns. You really gotta lean into the turns.
When Leah Thomas walked in that first day, it got silent, and every girl was uncomfortable.
Very difficult to go back-to-back years in the NFL with the #1 overall pick.
Is it fair for people to be upset with Barbie?
I've been out of LA long enough to have forgotten that libs, no matter how ridiculous the scenario, are gonna live. Another week of inflation, another week with Biden with COVID, and another set of losers to crown. People don't watch the WNBA on TV, in person, on a plane, on a train, on a bus, or on purpose. I mean, what have you seen firsthand of how this has affected you in the plant and your fellow employees? Under Joe Biden, the Taliban has retaken Afghanistan. Putin has invaded Ukraine. So if there was ever a time for freaking aliens to inhabit and conquer Earth, now would be that time.
We've seen coaches throw water bottles. We've seen coaches act like idiots. We've seen coaches slap other coaches. But I think if you're involved in carjacking, you're inherently a rotten human being. The level of stupid that sometimes gets on our YouTube chat just gives me a headache. You're born a male, play with males. You're born a female, play with females. Don't at me about it. The American people are being cheated. We, ladies and gentlemen, are being cheated.
I made the call to end the Me Too movement, and today I'm going to continue making that case. And that's just a way to further taunt these women, to make them feel less than, to make them realize that this has just become a big joke. Deion Sanders is the Donald Trump of football.
We were directly impacted by the whole Leah Thomas thing, and we were able to see you guys on the ground with your signs supporting. That was huge.
They were saying, oh, it's only 1 or 2. That's rubbish, and we all know that's rubbish. Once those trans-identifying males were able to succeed, it just encouraged others.
Old Smoky Moonshine and Whiskey. A bold taste of a Southern legend.
Glad you're with us as we broadcast from 6th and Peabody with Yeehaw Beer and Old Smoky Moonshine. Hot Mike with Hutton and Withrow rolls on across the OutKick Network. Trey Wallace from OutKick, senior reporter for college football for us, in studio with us. Always great to have Trey here. Trey, thanks for hanging for another segment here with us.
Yeah, no, I'd love to.
So, and I'll get into what Rittenberg has put out about what the Big Ten is weighing, suspension or fine or whatever it might be.
Yeah.
But a scenario that I brought up right before the break. So let's say he's suspended for 2 games, which would be the standard suspension of the violation of the sportsmanship policy.
Yeah.
And maybe it's not this weekend. Who knows when this is announced, but it could be today. I know Chad has nailed it so far with the timeline of this week.
Yeah.
If it's 2 games, but it's not this week, that leads into the Ohio State matchup. What would the pressure be like on Ryan Day, where he's got to beat Michigan? That's been the talk. He's calling out Lou Holtz because you want to see a physical team. We're physical against Notre Dame, whatever. I said at the time, I think he's venting more about the pressure, hearing everything about being beaten at the line of scrimmage in the trenches against Michigan the last couple of years. If the pressure, number one, to beat Michigan, the country vast majority of football fans are going to want Ohio State to beat Michigan.
Right.
And if Harbaugh's not on the sideline, the pressure to just beat Michigan based on that, what would Day be feeling on game day?
I think it's one of those, okay, congrats, you beat him, but you beat him with an interim coach. I mean, you can't get over the hump. You know what I mean? You can't beat Harbaugh.
Right, that would be the response.
It diminishes.
And if you lose, it's worse.
I mean, it doesn't take away from the talent on the field, but you're not beating the coach that you're being paid to beat. And that's the biggest thing out of all of it, Chad. I mean, I don't know how you go on this one, but I feel like if they were to beat Michigan, but then come to find out, heading into the game, like it also just takes away the spice of the game. It's not Ryan Day, it's not Harbaugh, it's Ryan Day versus Jesse Minter, the defensive coordinator. Or
it's a made-for-TV event if he returns.
And Tony Petitti is a former TV executive. I keep coming back to this, and I'm thinking best-case scenario to me would be 2-game suspension that Michigan does not sue them over. They take it. They beat Penn State. They beat Maryland. Now you've got undefeated Michigan prepping for undefeated Ohio State with the return of Jim Harbaugh on Big Noon Kickoff on Fox. That is Tony Petitti's dream and the Big Ten's dream if that were to be the case. And you feel like you've done something to show some toughness against Michigan in this thing to appease the rest of the Big Ten. I don't know that any of that's going to happen. But that would be something if it played out that way.
That's like a WrestleMania buildup. If it does play out like that, and Fox would absolutely love it. And then you would see ESPN cash in as well, send game day, do all that good stuff as well. So I mean, the way things are going right now with Tony Petitti and the Big Ten, I think an injunction would stop all of that. But if Michigan were to just say, all right, man, whatever. Like, we'll agree to it. You know what I mean? Let's go ahead and get this over with. We'll take care of our next 2 opponents, and then we'll just go beat Ohio State. That's the perfect setup for it.
Briefly here, I think what has happened is Adam Rittenberg put this out about an hour ago. While the Big Ten has considered a suspension for Jim Harbaugh, they're also discussing a wide range of possibilities, which is you could assume that based on their statement or the report, rather, that they were going to wait on Michigan to respond and then discuss how Michigan responded before they come down with the penalty immediately.
Yeah.
But they're also discussing just a significant fine. And public reprimands and fines have been handed down through the sportsmanship policy of the Big Ten in the past. This, though, is more of what have we just waded into? If every time that we're getting into sign stealing and what happened we're doing the investigation before the NCAA is finishing theirs. I think it's more of just the realization that if we do this and we're harsh here, how harsh do we have to be that something that is well above sending Conor Stallions out on the road? And if it's a fine, this looks awful for Petiti, the Big Ten, and the committee and the directors and the coaches that wanted to hand down some significant deal, and Michigan's done nothing but say, go ahead and try to prove it that our coach knew. You can't.
I don't think Petiti is going to be on the job probably for another year. And I mean that in whatever decision he makes here. Okay, let's just say he decides to fine Michigan. We're going to fine you, and we're gonna hit you in the checkbook.
It's a $10,000 fine based on the rule of the violation.
Right.
Up to.
Thanks, Tony. I appreciate you, bro.
Right.
Like, you could come out and say, okay, thank you. Yes, okay. We believe Michigan broke rules, and we're punishing them under the sportsmanship policy. This is how we're doing it. But then you're going to have the folks that, I'm talking about the Ryan Days, I'm talking about the Brett Bielemas, I'm talking about everybody else that has complained, and the ADs and presidents are like, wait a minute. We just spent 3 weeks on this, and you were this close to making a decision about suspending. And look, I have talked to multiple people in the Big Ten, multiple people inside the NCAA. Talked to somebody at Michigan last night. They are full on expecting the suspension. And then they're going to turn around, they're going to file the injunction, and then the judge will overhear it, probably in Detroit, I would imagine, is where an injunction is filed. And then he would be able to coach for the rest of the season. And then, by the way, they would say, oh, forget about it after the season's over.
Dismissed or whatever. But they have to do something. Even if the injunction is inevitable, at this point, I don't know why you do this and get, waist high with the NCAA.
Well, I'll tell you why.
If you're just going to fine him $10,000, which is what's written in the policy.
Well, the $10,000 thing, quickly on this, and we'll kind of move on because Hutton's got a great question I want him to ask. The only reason that you do something is if it's 13 against 1.
Yes.
And you're very rarely going to have consensus on anything. Paying for players in a scandal. Well, it's never going to be everybody against one because everybody else is doing it or could get accused of doing it soon, and they know it could come back on them. If everyone is adamant that this is so far above and beyond,
you're right,
and we do not like this at all, then Tony Petiti has an opportunity. I don't think it's ever going to come about, or maybe not that often, where an entire conference is like, that team is doing that, and only that team is doing that. And I'm willing to put my neck on the line and say, they're doing it, we're not, no one else is. Now, lay the hammer on them. And that's kind of what the Big Ten is saying here. We'll see if they do anything.
But by the way,
he's got to lay the hammer, though, because if he doesn't, it's just solely at the discretion of the commissioner, not the Big Ten's committee. The committee would – that's why I say you need to do something more than just the standard violation, because you want the committee to approve what you've put forth in front of them.
So
it's your fallback.
First 2 games of next year for Michigan.
Okay.
Just as a hypothetical.
Okay.
If he said you're going to be suspended the first 2 games next year and not interfere with this season.
Not the second
it's a big one, right?
Fresno State and Texas.
Okay, Texas.
Texas and Michigan. Fresno State's pretty good, too, but still.
Yeah.
That's a tougher first 2 than the 3.
Is Texas at Michigan?
Yeah.
Okay.
I think the biggest look, if they're going to hammer.
I just looked that up just as a hypothetical.
If they're going to hammer Michigan, why not hammer them in the recruiting? We see this all over the country in a lot of different schools. Hammer them in recruiting. Don't let them host some official visitors. Don't let them, whatever, off-campus recruiting and whatnot. you're opening up a big can of worms if you suspend him for a number of games. Michigan's going to immediately file an injunction on this, like we had previously said. And talking with folks before I'd even got here today, they're taking their time. Lawyers are taking their time with this in the Big Ten. Tony Petitri's taking his time in trying to just navigate around this because he knows either way he's going to agitate, and that's probably not the right strong word for this.
He's already done that.
He's going to agitate either the 13 teams or the one team. And by the way, the one team, probably from a revenue standpoint, is a lot bigger than the other 12 teams besides Ohio State. So
and those 12 are throwing in the revenue of the college football playoff and possibly having 2 in.
Exactly, and that's why this is such a big decision. Last night, this is all playing out like exactly how we thought it would. That the Michigan will respond. I spoke with Tom Mars last night. He responded, with a letter, an 8-page letter to the Big Ten as well. He is Jim Harbaugh's attorney. He has represented multitudes of players. You probably heard his name before. And now it sets up where now we're sitting around here and we're waiting on the Big Ten to just make a decision. And this decision could lead into tomorrow. It could lead into Saturday. It could lead into Monday.
So perception-wise,
yeah,
I've lost faith in buying into Penn State with James Franklin winning the big game. Every last 3 years, I feel like this is, if not now, when. Yeah. That was my mantra going into the Ohio State matchup. Same could be said for Lane Kiffin at Ole Miss, where 2 years ago they're going to Tuscaloosa, they're unbeaten. And I made note the first time I'd been to Bryant-Denny in that setting for an SEC game, and I made note it was like fans were just showing up for church. They were going to tithe. Yeah. They knew they were going to leave. Yeah. They're going to feel better about themselves.
Take the blessing.
And I'm like, this is unbeaten Ole Miss. What's going on here? And they went in and boat raced them.
Go in peace and serve the Lord at the end of the game.
21-0 at the snap of fingers. This past year, this is the year to get Bama, right? No. Better. Who would you bet on? Who do you have more faith in winning this weekend? James Franklin and Penn State over Michigan, or Lane Kiffin and Ole Miss against Georgia?
I've got a very easy answer here. To me, it's James Franklin only because he's at home against Michigan. I'd have no faith in Lane Kiffin going on the road and winning that huge game against a top 5 opponent. I mean, it's rare for a reason, even with some of the really great teams across college football. But I think James Franklin, I said it before, this is going to be a memorable outcome, good or bad for him. He can be the guy that did, to go back to Hutton's church reference, the Lord's work here and took care of Michigan on the field when everybody's angry with them, or he's the guy who's remembered for falling flat on his face at home against Michigan again, which he's done far too often. What do you think, Trey?
And failing the college football world.
Yeah.
No, I mean, okay, Lane's got himself a quarterback that will go through hell and back on first, second, third down. And I think that Jackson Dart is the type of player that can go in there, and I think if he gets hot, Trey Lawrence gets hot on the outside, Judkins gets hot running back. Like, this is the type of game that we look forward to, okay? When's the last time that we had a big game like this at Georgia at night? If I'm not mistaken, it was probably the Notre Dame game. A couple years ago, big night game that we had. CBS was on it. They were broadcasting it. Like, this just feels like, and I saw Kiffin speaking with somebody, said he's not trying to put as much pressure on himself this week heading into this one. This Kirby-Kiffin matchup, it can go a long ways towards what Lane Kiffin is trying to cement his legacy in college football if he can pull this off. I understand you guys are talking about James Franklin and winning at home, but I also look at the offenses of both teams. There's something about this game, and I'm not calling an upset. Don't take it like that. But there's something about this game.
I think you should call the upset. Trey.
Well, there's something about this damn game.
You're almost there. Go ahead.
That makes me feel like Lane Kiffin and his smug self sometimes, which I enjoy, by the way, and Ole Miss can go in there and outshine Georgia. We saw Missouri hang with Georgia last weekend with Brady Cook, Luther Bowden going in there, take care of business. I think Ole Miss is a better football team than Missouri. Obviously, not a shot at Eli Drinkwitz. I just got this weird feeling, man, that Saturday night is going to bring out some craziness, and we've seen everything go. We've seen everything go Georgia's way over the last 2 years. 21-game home winning streak. Blah 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 blah. Man, it's time for a little chaos in college football, and for things to get a little crazy for Georgia.
So the stats on Jackson Dart home versus away is staggering.
I know.
And the other thing to watch is so Ole Miss on the road this year in Tuscaloosa jumped out to what was 17-7.
Yeah.
They played well in the first half. Bama's been a second half team. Georgia has been too. And the question would be, can Ole Miss sustain whatever good play they have through 2 quarters? I just don't buy it. I think Penn State's defense, I'll buy into that. I like Chad's reference to just playing at home.
You won't see the type of play
Michigan
calling.
just boat races everyone.
Right.
You know? I think it's more Kiffin, and it's just because Georgia, I just believe they're losing a game down the road here. And maybe Bama too. Maybe they lose to Bama in the SEC title.
Yeah.
I just don't think it's as simple as they're waltzing through, because it hasn't been a waltz. They've had to struggle to get back into it, and to their credit, they have. Kiffin needs to hang on. I'll take Kiffin in the argument.
Trey, thanks, buddy.
Jimmy
Good
Frank.
seeing you, man.
Absolutely, guys. Always a pleasure.
Talk Deion Sanders and NFL next.
Dabo Swinney ripping his own fans. Dabo Swinney at Clemson is, I don't know, they tell me that he's the guy that doesn't like the transfer portal because he's made some comments that weren't exactly supportive of it. Dabo Swinney has done a job at Clemson that very few thought could be done. Clemson is a town about this big. Well, I better do this, not that, because that's like a white power sign idiots say. It's about that big. The state is South Carolina. The state is not Clemson. So, but Dabo Swinney put Clemson in rarefied air. If you, a couple years ago, were going to name me the 3 best college football teams before Georgia's run here, you'd say Alabama, Ohio State, and Clemson. That's kind of who it always came down to. It felt like. So Dabo Swinney is now the victim of something that is good in one way, but it's bad in another. Incredible expectations of your fan base, meaning 10-2 ain't good enough. It just ain't. You can say whatever you want, but it just ain't. We got to be better. What? We're not in the college football playoff? What? We're not winning a national champion? What? We're 4-2? That's only winning 67% of our games? Here's what Dabo had to say. If you don't go undefeated, people say you're losers, that you're terrible. Let me tell you something. This is why football coaches for years and years and years and years fought the college football playoff. We're at a point in time, and I hate that, where people, if you don't go undefeated, you're losers. You're terrible. It's just a terrible mindset. Honestly, maybe we need to lose a few games and lighten up the bandwagon. Sometimes the bandwagon get a little full. That's the one good thing about going through a little bit of so-called adversity, is that you really find out who's with you and who's not. That's all crap. Let me explain to you Dabo Swinney's day, can I? Dabo Swinney probably wakes up around 5:30. Dabo Swinney smokes shit, shower, shave, shampoo, goes to the office. Probably has a meeting at 7. Dabo Swinney then is probably in different meetings with players or recruits, or maybe the administration, and maybe watching film, whatever. Then he has practice. Then after practice, he's doing the same thing. Then in the evening, he's making phone calls. Probably goes home around 10. At no point in time in his day, his week, his month, his year, is he finding out who's with us and who's not with us. It's not like there's a list. Now, maybe you find out what media member wants to rip you, but on a daily basis, a monthly basis, you're not finding out any of this crap. It's very simple. Coaches, if you want to know who's with you, understand that when you lose, nobody's really with you. If you want to know who's really with you, win. And then everybody's really with you. It's literally that simple. As my father used to say to me, Dan, we're with you, win or tie, and we ain't so sure about the tie. So shut up with that stuff, win some football games, and don't sweat it. Seriously, do yourself a favor. Work hard, grab yourself a glass of wine, go sit in your chair, and read a book. instead of being on social media or worrying about who is with you and who is not with you.
Just like that, hour number 2 is here on the Thursday edition. Chad, the weekend is here.
Weekend has arrived.
Go ahead and declare it.
It's the weekend, everyone. Great job. Way to go. You made it.
Football's back tonight, albeit it's Chicago and Carolina on Thursday Night Football. Next week, though.
Doesn't feel like a reason to celebrate. The weekend being here is a reason to celebrate. That game, NFL game tonight, not a reason to celebrate.
Chicago can't lose tonight. Here's how. So they're getting Carolina's pick. So if they beat Carolina, that helps them obtain. They're one step closer to getting the number 1 pick, right? They're also, if Chicago loses, that moves them up the charts a bit too, because they also will have a very high pick. So you can't lose if you're drafting for the future.
Yeah, it's
next week though, Baltimore, Cincinnati, Thursday Night Football.
That's what we're talking about. That's Thursday's always the new weekend in football season, so we're going to keep it there. But next Thursday is more of a reason to celebrate the weekend.
Yes. Well, Al Michaels celebrate.
Al Michaels, if everyone's saying it, you should pay attention. It's not just a couple critics that you're sounding off against. It's pretty much everyone acknowledging that you're not the same.
So coming up in 20 minutes, Armando Salguero will join us, the latest and more on the NFL going into Week 10. Also at the end of the hour, Jim Nagy will join us from the Reese Senior Bowl, the executive director, and we'll scout college football for the NFL draft a bit later this hour.
Just saw a quick Hollywood report. The strike is over with the actors and the writers now, so everyone can officially get back to work. But that was yesterday. There's now a report that Yellowstone Season 5 Part 2, which will be the very end of the show, will be coming back, but Kevin Costner will not be a part of it at all. So I don't know if they just kill him off and they talk about it to start the next part of the final season and just say that he died off screen.
Are they going to
on the show, or how that's going to happen?
CGI or AI? Can you do it that way to show like a 30-second clip to open a season?
Well, that's a big part of the actors.
Have him in a car?
A big part of the actor strike was over AI rights, because they signed away with contracts some of that where people can use them in movies and shows and their voice, and they want it back because of the different tricks you can do now with that. So I don't think that would be the case, but report is out that Kevin Costner will not be a part of it. John Dutton not returning to the show's final batch of episodes, which will be Season 5 Part 2. Also confirmed, there will be another Yellowstone that is going to be called, you ready for this, Putton? 2024 is the name of the new show. Since they have 1883 and 1923, the new one is going to be 2024, starring Matthew McConaughey. And the thought is it's all going to be filmed on the 4 Sixes Ranch in Texas. The show moves from Montana to Texas.
Which is the spinoff they tried to have, right? Or
and that's where they'll get some Yellowstone characters going to Texas or being a part of the show.
It just, what pissed off Costner so much to where he won't finish or just film one scene?
Well, I think both sides are pissed off now. I think he's pissed off Taylor Sheridan.
But I don't know
Costner's
the background to where just go to him and film like one scene in front of a green screen.
Yeah, well, there's clearly that the relationship is soured. Because you're right, he could go for 3 days and shoot something, or they could come to him and shoot something, and they're just not doing it.
I hate this. I hate this development. Deion Sanders recently on Dan Patrick doubled down and made it clear he's not going to be taking a job in the NFL as a coach. As we top headlines, Sanders has said before that he would not want to coach in the NFL because of the motivational factors behind who you're coaching. He doesn't want to coach guys who are making certain paychecks and more than the coach because the players have the power. And I'm paraphrasing, but he said that before, and he's saying it again. He has no interest whatsoever, he told Dan. I don't think I'm built for the NFL. I don't think because I appreciate the game so much, I respect the game so much, and what the game has consistently done for me for a multitude of years, that when I see a guy getting paid millions and millions of dollars, and he has no respect for the game and does not want to excel and exceed expectations of the game, I'm going to have a true problem. So I think the kind of coach who would go out there with 53 and come back from halftime with about 32 is what he said, with how he would handle certain players. This isn't surprising because he's been pretty straightforward on his opinions of what he wants to do and where, and it's not going to be in the pros.
Yeah, I never, once you, and I'll be honest, it's not like I'm watching Jackson State games when he's there a ton. So what you know about Deion Sanders is what you know about Deion Sanders coming into. You know about primetime. You know about his personality as a player. You know about him when he was on television or doing shows. So that's what you knew about him. I didn't know as much about him from a coaching standpoint at Jackson State. The extent of my knowledge was on a 60 Minutes profile of him at the time. But the more you hear him and the more you watch him at Colorado, the guy is patently old school.
Yes.
I mean, he is old school as they come. He is going to offend more than he's going to be some cutting-edge guy that's giving players all the rights in the world to do whatever they want. He's going to get people leaving his program more often than not because he's going after them in a way. But now he's also going to attract the right type of player eventually that's going to want that type of discipline and someone that's going to tell them like it is the way that Deion Sanders will. That is not conducive to the NFL. So I've never viewed him as a big threat to leave for the NFL. His style, I don't think it meshes with the NFL game, where it is much more of a the head coach is still the head coach, but it's also a professional relationship of sometimes give and take in the NFL ranks with star players and the coach. And Deion's not going to be about that.
But the thing is, I'm on the fence with this, of whether or not he would be able to do what he's doing now there. And I realize the money's a factor. Yes, there are guys that just go through the motions at a certain time. That's why I was asking Tank Williams yesterday, how many teams truly are locked in right now, just based on the quarterback play alone. But I mean, isn't it surprising that he's got he walks into Colorado and says, "Hey, most of you guys aren't going to be here. Time to pack up. I'm going to recruit over you immediately. We're going to get better. There's a new standard, new sheriff." And then he does that, turns over the roster, and he turns over the roster with players that absolutely want to follow him there or want to join him there. That's going to continue to happen. The assumption is he's going to crush it in the portal because they're so low right now in the class of 24 in recruiting. But, Chad, if he's doing it here with some of the top players, wouldn't some of the top players in the NFL want to play for him too? That would also be my assumption, is that he would recruit the talent just by being primetime.
Yeah,
and that's what he's doing at Colorado to the point where, I mean, they're a PR machine.
But here's the problem. Yes, there are players who would want to go play for him in the NFL. The problem is he's going to have to answer to a billionaire owner in the NFL. He's going to have to answer to the league. He answers to no one at Colorado right now.
Right.
He is his own boss. I don't think the AD there or the president is telling him, hey, you cannot do this thing this way, or you cannot say that in a press conference. When they do, he'll probably quit and leave.
That's fair.
Because he's going to do things his way. Can't do that in the NFL. If you go all willy-nilly and start bad-mouthing your entire offensive line and say, we need to cut these guys this week and go find new ones, and the owner comes in and says, hey, man, can't do that in this league.
Or the GM's like, cap space, can't do it.
Yeah, the salary cap says we can't do what you're saying. We can't sign 5 all-pro offensive linemen the way you want to. Then it's not gonna jive with him there. He can get away with whatever he wants right now at Colorado.
But instead of guys leaving the program with his old school approach, he's got guys storming the castle to join him. That's the big. There's no one like him that does that. Just arrive somewhere and it's like, let's go.
Well, let's be fair. Let's be fair with this too, because that is the perception. But here is Colorado exactly where we thought they were going to be. They might win 4 games. That's what, a game or 2 better than the worst case scenario?
Their over-under this year was, what, 2?
Yeah, so, okay. They won 4. Well, that's good. They got a hot start going. But who did they lure in? Deion's son, a guy who was already at Jackson State, and Travis Hunter. Those are the 2 stars of the team.
Yep.
They've got some good skill guys on there, but outside of that, most of these transfers are dudes that weren't playing at other schools that he went in the transfer portal and got.
But they're vastly better than what they were, and
better.
And I want to say, it's not just a 1-year snapshot. Where are they at this point next year, based on what they're about to do?
I don't know.
That's the big question.
But what are they about to do?
Well, they're doing more right now than what I thought they would do.
Well,
they
what are
did
they
more
doing
in recruiting than what I thought they would do.
Well, they're terrible in recruiting right now.
Well,
you had the stats yesterday, and they're what, 50th something?
Yeah, but
in high school recruiting.
And you responded and said what?
Well, they're going to go in the portal and try to do things, but that's an assumption. I don't know that they're going to get everybody they want in the portal, right?
Deion does it though. I mean, he's the idea that
again, you're giving a very small snapshot of saying he's going to win maybe 2 games more than he was projected to win this year. He's talking about the both lines suck on this team. He's going to have to go get completely new lines.
That's where he'll dominate.
That has yet to work in college football, by the way. There's no one that it completely turns over an offensive line or defensive line and doesn't develop within their program while also supplementing in the portal to have a good cohesive line. Yeah. So I'm just saying let's pump the brakes a bit on this is what Deion does, here's what he's going to do. I know what he's going to try to do. I think he's going to do well in the transfer portal, but we haven't really seen it. So far, his 2 big transfer portal finds are his son, his other son, and then another guy that's playing at Jackson State.
Who are great.
Yeah.
Who are great.
Again, let's see it more, though, before we crown him.
But
the transfer portal king.
I think we'll see it more. I've just seen more from him already than what I've seen from coaches who bolt and try to immediately win. And guys who do win, like Brian Kelly at LSU, aren't backing it up this year, in year 2, where I think the expectation at Colorado is he's going to continue to And do I think he's at Colorado long term? No, I don't. So that's the other point is like where does he end up and how fast is that climb? Because it's already been, I mean, considering the former players who just jump in and the recruiting violations that we see because guys don't know the rules or whatever, he's managed this really well, considering all of the hype, the circumstance around it. And, I mean, he's on national TV every week. And he says a lot of what players want to hear. And a lot of the coaches, Nick Saban's going on a weekly with McAfee because he wants to be relevant with Deion. Because Deion can name his time and place. I don't know if there's another coach like that. You know, Dabo's trying to defend the opposite stance.
Yeah.
You know, and he's defensive. Meanwhile, Deion's like, come on.
I'm just saying we think he's going to do well. I think he's going to do well. They've got 11 commitments right now. That number's going to go up in high school recruiting, and their ranking should rise. And I think they're going to do well in the portal. I just want to see another offseason of it because this first iteration of Colorado football is successful in that it got a ton of buzz. They won more early on than anyone expected. It's fallen back to what everybody thought as the season has gone on, and they've been less interesting as the losses pile up.
The Stanford loss is the big one.
I want to see how nuking your entire offensive line on television and talking about how bad they suck and how you're going to go get new guys. I want to see how that plays in the offseason.
And that's what he did with
and
the locker room.
And what level of offensive lineman he gets in. Nuking the guys he inherited at Colorado. I just want to see more. I'm with you, Hutton, in that I expect him to do well and better than Colorado's done the last 25 or 30 years. I just want to see what this next offseason looks like with how he recruits and who he brings in. I also don't think he's going anywhere for a while. And when I say a while, I'm saying 5 years. I think there's going to be a 3 to 5 year window where he's going to be at Colorado and not bolt for somewhere else. Because if he's going somewhere else, as we were talking about with this story, it's not the NFL. It's going to be some big-time program.
Well, he's already said that Shedeur and Shiloh are going to the NFL draft together in 2025.
Yep. So there you go.
That's circle that date.
Yep.
That's one.
But who comes calling And what program that is going to be willing to let Deion be Deion totally and really operate without a boss and operate how he wants? What level of program will be willing to do that will also be enough to entice him to leave Boulder? I don't think that number is huge of programs that will both relinquish all control to Deion and be such a surefire heads and shoulders better job than Colorado that he's going to leave for them.
Well, but what we've already admitted, though, is how many of the programs that passed on him regret it right now? We've asked that a month ago.
I can tell you one. It should be Mississippi State.
Well,
I said that the moment that he was there in Jackson.
Well,
and
whatever Florida State did to him, he's not wanting to coach for the Seminoles anymore.
Well, Florida State, they're in the playoff right now, so
Sure.
I doubt they're upset with Norvell. But
sure,
I think, and look, Zach Arnett hasn't had much of an opportunity, and it was horrible circumstances that he took the job. So I'm not trashing that guy or anything he's done at Mississippi State right now. I'm just saying that would have made a ton of sense, given what he did in Jackson, Mississippi, right down the road from Starkville, and what he could possibly do in the SEC in the Deep South. Could have been something to watch. That's the one I'm looking at and thinking, we may be saying 2 years from now they'd like a do-over at Mississippi State.
He's also got a legit offensive tackle that isn't eligible to play right now because the NCAA won't pass the transfer waiver. Remember that from the preseason?
The NCAA holding on to whatever little power they have left. Anywhere they can have power in their fiefdom, they're going to hold on to it.
That guy was also pointing to mental health.
Yeah, that's right. That's the reason why he went with Deion.
Yeah, they said you can't transfer again.
Maybe you should sue the NCAA for $40 million.
Yeah, and record a conversation with the phone. Coming up, Armando Salguero joins us. The very latest on there's a lot of injuries across the league, plus a couple of big matchups in Week 10. Armando next on Hot Mic.
Quote, a good state champion caliber high school boys team would smoke the best team in the WNBA. Then this weekend, after the video was posted and the critics, of course, came for him, he doubled down on what he said, posting this on X. Quote, it's sexist to say women's basketball players aren't as good as men's. That was a question, obviously. It's my opinion, and I'm putting $1 million behind it. If I'm wrong, the WNBA team can take my money and make more from one game than they do for the entire season. Okay, so let's get into this because obviously there's a lot of people out there who are just assuming that Clay is being sexist, that he is trying to really punk the WNBA because let's be honest, the ratings for the WNBA aren't great, which is exactly why Clay made the joke at the end of that. If you were to give them $1 million for losing the bet, that would be more than the WNBA would make regularly for one game under normal circumstances. But the fact remains that men and women biologically super different, and that's what he's talking about. We even look at a boys' high school basketball team and the makeup of their players, what they're able to do, their size, their skills, and look at the WNBA players who are oftentimes much older. They're professional basketball players, but still, the level of competition would not at all be on the same playing field. So, Chris, let's get into that. What is your take on this? The fact that people would say that, Clay, you're being sexist, when reality remains men and women, super different, even at very different ages, different places in their careers, there would be no matchup whatsoever.
I don't even think it's questionable. I love that Clay took it to him. I think a lot of times silence speaks louder than words. The Las Vegas Aces haven't said anything in response yet. Mm-hmm. So, look, you're right. I dug into the rosters, the Las Vegas Aces, and then, look, I've spent some time training at IMG Academy. I work with athletes at a school called Lou High, which is one of the top programs in the country. And we have guards 6'4", 6'5", 6'6". We're on the Aces. The tallest players are 6'3" and 6'4", and those are their bigs. So they don't even have anybody to really account for the bigs on the male teams. And I don't know that it's how in any way is this a sexist
question.
Thing to say. Yeah.
Well, I have a woman, I think, who will be able to help answer this question. She is super smart. She's super intelligent. I am a big fan of her. Everybody, you're also a big fan of her. We all are. It just has to be said. So let's go ahead and bring in the woman of the hour, Riley Gaines. Hello, Riley. I'm happy to see you again. I feel like I get to spend so much time with you these days.
I know, right? Very good to see you, and I will say it is rainy here as well, which just sucks.
Okay, so are you? I know the last time we talked, you were like bouncing all over the place. Where are you right now?
I'm actually in Nashville, but headed to New York today. So I'll be on deck.
Okay, well, welcome. You get to go from rain to rain.
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. So, Riley, let's get into the topic that we were just discussing. Obviously, Clay being a little bit sarcastic in the way that he framed the question, but he's saying he's willing to make a bet that the WNBA champions, still being the champions, professional basketball players, would not be able to hold a candle to any high school boys basketball team in the country. Is he being sexist, or is he just speaking facts that men and women are very different in terms of what they are capable of athletically?
Boom. Right there. It's not sexist to say men and women are different. It, like you said, it's reality, it's truth, it's common sense, it's logic, it's reasoning. We all know it.
Chad, how would you describe the 5 spot with Donovan McNabb and Armando Salguero on OutKick?
Riveting. Riveting National Football League coverage from 2 of the very best. One in the area of journalism, the other in the area of quarterbacking. That's how I describe it, Hutton. Is that good enough for you?
It's great. It's not.
Would that be the Apple podcast description of it underneath?
Yeah, and I would say also, like, they also dabble in a little college discussion because
they dabble.
They talked Caleb Williams, future rookie in the NFL coming up, and it's a week where 10 rookie quarterbacks will be starting, a new record. Armando Salguero joins us on Hot Mic with Hutton Withrow. Armando, good to see you, man. Hope things are well.
Everything's great. I have not cried in a while.
Chad has some arms for you, though, if you'd like to.
Yeah.
Arms wide open.
I could put this paper over you, too, like Caleb Williams' mom, and just shield you from cameras as you sob uncontrollably in my arms.
All right. Let me say something on that.
Yep.
So Patton, who is General Patton, who was the Ajax general of the United States Army and one of the biggest butt kickers in World War II on behalf of the United States of America, he cried in front of his troops when he had to apologize for slapping that guy at the MASH unit. So he cried. I guess if there had been social media back then, they would have said, the guy can't lead, a rout of the Germans because he cried in public.
Yeah, look, I think it's less to me about him crying. I like seeing a guy who cares. Yeah. Whether they win or lose. Like,
we reacted the same way, by the way.
Yeah, like that was, it was odd timing, but I was fine with it because it shows a guy who cares. If I'm drafting a quarterback, and Armando, you know this, and Donovan knows this, quarterback is the one area where you're looking at everything, right, for the leader of your team. It's not edge rusher. It's not offensive guard. You're looking at everything. I look at the painting, the fingernails, whoever the opponent is. I look at his dad running his mouth about we'll just go back to USC or about partial ownership in a team. I look at him putting LOL about Max Duggan a year ago being emotional and being injured in their game. I mean, there's just these little red flags. I just want to go home and watch Netflix, is the comment after the game also. It's less to me about the crying and more about accumulation of a number of things with Caleb Williams that with his talent on the field, albeit it's great, I would have some question marks. Would you have question marks?
Everybody's going to have, question marks. We're getting started early we will be starting early on the anonymous personnel source that just devastates Caleb Williams' personality and character at some point. And,
But what
makes
will he
him
score on
no
the S2? That's what everybody really wants to know, right? Based on C.J. Stroud's. We better get that S2 score right because that really affected C.J. Stroud in the NFL.
Yeah, I was going to bring that up. So, I mean, look, everything gets put under the microscope, and obviously including, the tape. But at the end of the day, we've had a lot of guys who get put under the microscope, and it looks really bad, like C.J. Stroud last, draft cycle. And all of a sudden, the stuff that was on the tape translated to the field. And does C.J. Stroud, does he have a little bit of an edge? Is he a little different? Yeah, but he's also 14-1 touchdown to interception ratio right now. And Caleb Williams is arguably a better prospect than what C.J. Stroud was. So that's going to be an interesting conversation had by a lot of personnel departments.
Yeah, and the draft process is so cyclical, too, in the reporting. Like last year we started with, is it going to be Bryce Young, C.J. Stroud, Will Levis, and then everyone goes around the table and everyone's hopping over each other based on reports. And by the end of it, Bryce Young's the number 1 overall pick. And my guess is Caleb Williams, by the end of this, it'll be cyclical. It'll be back to where we were before the season kicked off and the expectations of who's going to try to tank for Caleb Williams, which is also laughable. Not cyclical has been the reporting surrounding the hot seat for Bill Belichick. What do you make of the latest report from Ben Volen, who even just throws it out there that from what he heard and what sources have told him, that it's pretty important that Bill Belichick win in Germany on Sunday morning against the Indianapolis Colts? Isn't that bizarre?
I would want to tell you that it is. Let me share a story with you.
Okay.
So in 2015, the Miami Dolphins went to the UK, and they were something like, I think, 1-2 or something like that, or maybe 1-3. And I asked a source within the team, is it possible that Joe Philbin, who was the coach at the time, gets fired if he doesn't come back with a win? And what I expected was no comment, or you're crazy, we're 4 games into a season. What I got was, yes, it's possible. Absolutely, it's possible. He needs to win to keep his job for sure. So I'm assuming that exercise is what Ben Volen went through within the team, okay? I don't know who Ben's source is, but I'm assuming he did that. And if he reported it, I'm assuming that someone within the team is telling him that, and I would take it seriously. Do I think it's a wise move? No, I think it's ridiculous. Because you don't do that to Bill Belichick the second week of November. You just don't. And I think that the departure of Bill Belichick from the New England Patriots will be a negotiated, and on the front door, in the windows, it'll be amicable, even though behind the scenes and in the warehouse, it'll be a war.
Yes. And similar to the Brady exit, right? Like we know Belichick and Brady were in the middle of this, and Kraft tried to have the meeting going. He met with Brady. All 3 were not there, apparently. You get where I'm going. It feels the same way between Kraft and Belichick. But let me just spin it this way. Why fire him when you could potentially trade him?
You're absolutely right. That makes a lot of sense. To trade someone has to be into it, wanting to do it. And my guess is Bill Belichick is one of those guys that if he gets fired, he will be in a poor mood. He has this this streak about him. Ask the New York Jets about that.
Yes.
And so, again, there will be lawyers, gentlemen. There will be lawyers.
Armando Salguero with us, OutKick.com's senior NFL reporter. Week 10 is not great, and it's because of 10 rookie quarterbacks that are starting this week, but also because you have some really good teams on the bye week. The Chiefs, Dolphins, and Eagles are not included in this schedule. But 10 rookie quarterbacks, I told Chad this yesterday, my perception is there were like 3 or 4, just because that's all we talked about during the draft process, right? And we're now up to 10. Offenses are not scoring a lot of points this year. And based on this, it doesn't seem like that's going to improve anytime soon.
Correct. And look, we're getting a lot of quarterbacks that are honestly playing because something terrible and catastrophic has happened within the roster, right?
Yes.
There's no reason why Tyson Bagent should be playing for the Chicago Bears other than the fact that Justin Fields dislocated his thumb. They did a terrible job of putting the roster together, and they had this kid who didn't expect to be in the NFL ascending to a starting job for a month. And you wonder why the Chicago Bears might have a little bit of turnover after the season.
Yeah.
So there's that. Obviously, you're getting situations where at least we don't, the Raiders are never expected to have to play Aiden O'Connell and never expected him to be better than Jimmy G, right? And yet here we are. He is better than Jimmy G. So that's the good side. The bad side is being better than Jimmy G is still, 16, 17 points a game, and it's not going to take you anywhere. The bottom line is I like to look at it as glass full. CJ Stroud has 14 touchdown passes and 1 interception. He's a rookie, and he's doing something as a rookie that was last done by Tom Brady in 2016, which is to have an NFL record 14-1 touchdown to interception ratio. Brady's was 28-2, which is still 14-1. Obviously, Stroud, the rookie, is fighting for Salguero's Rookie of the Year award or Defensive Rookie of the Year vote. And so far, he's got it.
So I asked the question last week, Armando. You were very dismissive of the question about the Vikings and whether or not they were done. And here's Josh Dobbs.
This year's Lions.
Under 2 minutes left, leading a come-from-behind victory down in Atlanta. So I'll ask you again, are the Vikings officially dead, or is there life with that team now with Dobbs at quarterback?
You did this to me last year with the Detroit Lions.
Yep.
And I resisted you and finally prevailed. I believe that this year I will once again prevail with this reporter's insistence. You're vexing me, Withrow. You're vexing me. And I do believe that the Minnesota Vikings, look, who'd they beat last week? Was it Atlanta?
It was.
They beat Atlanta? Yeah. Atlanta good?
They're looking worse. They looked okay to start the year, but the last 2 weeks they had
a quarterback that went through camp with them.
That's true.
Atlanta's going to have a new coach at the end of the year if that guy's not careful.
Yeah,
he
you're
lost
right.
to Josh Dobbs 3 days after he showed up to work. So, look, the Vikings were a good story. Josh Dobbs, nice story. No.
What is the story?
I'll check back next week.
Yeah, we'll ask again next week. What's the story over the second half of the season for the Cleveland Browns? And I ask this because they're playing Baltimore at Baltimore this week. They're 5-3. The 6-3 Browns, they're playing in the toughest division all 4 teams are in currently. What's capable for Watson? What's at stake for Watson over the second half where he can change the perception of you've been awful, this is the worst contract, compared to he can now lead the Browns to the playoffs based on where they are in the standings?
What's capable for Watson is he has the best defense in the NFL on his side. So that helps.
Yes.
It means you don't have to score 30, 32, 35 points a game, you're going to win a lot of 19 to 17s. And what's also capable is he was playing okay when he got hurt. His best game, I believe, was it against Tennessee?
Week 3.
Right?
Yep.
And then he got hurt. And he is working his way back towards that. He is not 100%. He's clearly not 100%. But the belief in Cleveland is that he's making progress and he will be 100%. And once he is there, maybe next week, maybe the week after, then they will be a team that will have a quarterback that can do things when the defense on rare occasions lets the team down. So that's the Cleveland hope. And you mentioned it. They play in a great division right now. I mean, Lamar Jackson is an MVP candidate. Joe Burrow is maybe playing as well as any quarterback in the NFL. Pittsburgh just knows how to win. And then the Browns have the great defense.
Literally 15 seconds here. Any chance that on Monday night the Broncos shock everybody and they beat Buffalo? A lot of people are worried about the Bills.
They should be. They have no consistency. I don't believe Josh Allen has, takes the coaching that his offensive coordinator and the staff are giving him. He's a free agent on the field, and that's not always good.
Armando, no free agent. You can find him at OutKick.com, and he's nice enough to join us weekly. We always love these visits, Armando. Have a great week, and enjoy Week 10.
Skol, Withrow, skol!
Hey, get ready for that question next week. Have your response prepared, Armando, for whatever happens as Josh Dobbs wins again.
Chad's Joshua Tree is Joshua Dobbs.
That's right.
That's right. Armando Salguero. If you can't get along with Armando, that's a you problem.
Josh Dobbs also a big U2 guy to complete the tie-in.
And Creed now all of a sudden.
Yeah.
Stay tuned.
Very
Jen
similar
Nagy joins
bands.
us next.
What you're experiencing is the bold taste of a Southern legend. Old Smoky Moonshine and Whiskey. Authentic Tennessee mountain-style spirits. We believe in crafting flavors that were born from tradition but defy expectation. And pioneering a new experience with every sip. Because if it doesn't do this, it ain't this. Old Smoky Moonshine and Whiskey. Come on.
Welcome into OutKick the show. I am Clay Travis, your fearless leader. I am going to continue to argue that sports is one of the great unifying forces in all of American life. ESPN is a sinking ship. Democrats are now the party of the white, woke college graduate.
We live in a land of participation trophies.
You gotta lean into the turns. You really gotta lean into the turns.
When Leah Thomas walked in that first day, it got silent, and every girl was uncomfortable.
Very difficult to go back-to-back years in the NFL with the #1 overall pick.
Is it fair for people to be upset with Barbie?
I've been out of LA long enough to have forgotten that libs, no matter how ridiculous the scenario, are gonna lib. Another week of inflation, another week with Biden with COVID, and another set of losers to crown. People don't watch the WNBA on TV, in person, on a plane, on a train, on a bus, or on purpose. I mean, what have you seen firsthand of how this has affected you in the plant and your fellow employees? Under Joe Biden, the Taliban has retaken Afghanistan. Putin has invaded Ukraine. So if there was ever a time for freaking aliens to inhabit and conquer Earth, now would be that time.
We've seen coaches throw water bottles. We've seen coaches act like idiots. We've seen coaches slap other coaches. But I think if you're involved in carjacking, you're inherently a rotten human being. The level of stupid that sometimes gets on our YouTube chat just gives me a headache. You're born a male, play with males. You're born a female, play with females. Don't at me about it. The American people are being cheated. We, ladies and gentlemen, are being cheated.
I made the call to end the Me Too movement. And today I'm going to continue making that case. And that's just a way to further taunt these women, to make them feel less than, to make them realize that this has just become a big joke. Deion Sanders is the Donald Trump of football.
We were directly impacted by the whole Leah Thomas thing, and we were able to see you guys on the ground with your signs supporting. That was huge.
They were saying, oh, it's only 1 or 2. That's rubbish, and we all know that's rubbish. Once those trans-identifying males were able to succeed, it just encouraged others.
Old Smoky Moonshine and Whiskey. A bold taste of the Southern Legend.
Hot Mike with Hutton and Withrow rolls on from 6th and Peabody. Yeehaw Beer and Old Smoky Moonshine, the host for our OutKick studios.
It's always an adventure here, Hutton.
Yeah, it is.
Every day. Never know what you're going to get.
Same could be said for Jim Nagy and the executive director of the Reese Senior Bowl and the work he does with all the scouting going into the draft process.
He goes and scouts someone, watches a game. He never knows what he's going to get.
That's right.
Every time.
That's right. Jim, how are you, man?
I'm doing good, guys.
So, did I see the report correct that now juniors are eligible for the Senior Bowl?
They are. Let's not even go down the road of what our game is called. So, sorry, I forgot to turn my ringer off here.
Oh, you're good.
Yeah, that came out yesterday, and we have been, we've been having juniors in the Senior Bowl for a couple of years now. Well, 10 years now. We get guys that are graduated.
Right.
So it is a little new. We're getting the guys that haven't graduated yet, but we've been in talks with the league office since August about this, so it didn't catch us off guard. It's something the teams have been wanting to do for a long, long time. I think that there was always hesitation on the league office's part a little bit, just to, you don't want to upset the apple cart with college football. It's, as everyone talks about, it's kind of a free feeder system to the NFL. But I think where college football is at right now with NIL and portal, the actual number of juniors that are coming into the draft has decreased significantly since 2019. I think that number spiked in like the 140s, and this past year it was down around 70. So it's been about cut in half in the last 3 years, with this NIL money, really essentially buying players back into school for another year. So it's going to be a great thing for our game. Really excited about it. It's going to ratchet up the star power of our game even more. We'll probably have, we're at about 40 players in the top 100 that get drafted out of our game, and now I expect that number to go up significantly.
So do you? I don't think it's that complicated, but do you have to scramble a bit? How long have you known that this rule was going to be in effect, essentially, so you could actually factor in certain invites at positions? Because you've told us you were looking at 6 to 8 quarterbacks. But were you doing that through the lens of this new framework?
Yeah, it's a great question. We've, like I said, since August is when we started having these discussions.
Okay.
So yes, our scouts have been out all fall watching juniors as well. Obviously didn't want to go public with all that, but we've built the board out all fall upstairs with juniors on it. And again, we're just waiting to see if they were going to make the call or not. We were ready to proceed one way or the other, if it was just pretty much an all senior game, or if we were going to have these juniors in the mix. So, but yeah, my phone's been ringing off the hook the last 24 hours with agents, because now they're trying to get juniors that they're talking to into the mix for the game. And I've assured them that we've accounted for those guys. So yeah, we're planning on, with the quarterback thing. I don't think the number changes. It just might affect a couple of the seniors that would have been in the mix are now kind of pushed out to make way for a couple of the juniors.
Jim Nagy with us, the executive director of the Reese's Senior Bowl. Through the lens of, we're going to see guys that choose to opt out of a bowl game coming up next month. The transfer portal has played a factor into NC State's quarterback. He's shutting it down. He's going to enter the portal. He's already announced it. From the flip side, because I don't think we look at the flip side all that much, Brock Bowers is going to return at some point for Georgia. How much does that factor in to how teams view him? Because we always ask the question about the guys who opt out, not the guys who stay in.
It certainly helps. I mean, in Brock's case, there's not much separation there, right? He is unquestionably the number one tight end in this class. Where he's jockeying now is with the other guys in that top 10 to top 15 range, really. And so, I mean, I think watching the tape and identifying the talent is really the easy part. And then up there at the top, I mean, you're trying to really find where the greatness is going to be. And greatness usually is in the makeup of the player. So, if Brock's wired that way competitively to come back and rejoin that Georgia football team for the home stretch here and trying to help them win a third straight national championship, obviously that will be viewed in a positive light by the teams that he's choosing to do so. And he's about his teammates. He's not being selfish about this. I'm sure, just like a lot of these players, Brock's going to have people in his ear telling him to shut it down. And if he goes against those people and goes what's in his heart, and that's to, go get back on the field for Georgia. Again, I think that will help separate him, not at the tight end position, but help separate him there in that, that top 10, top 15 conversation.
Do you feel like Caleb Williams has helped himself or hurt himself this season so far with his play? I know it's not going the way USC wanted, mainly because of the defense, but with everything going on, what do you see in him this season as opposed to last?
Again, it's hard for me to say because I haven't, spent a ton of time on Caleb. I just know from the outside looking in, just periphery, because I have watched other players on their offense. So you can't help but see Caleb in some of the plays he makes. But yeah, I mean, their defense has struggled. They haven't played complementary football. Caleb's turned the ball over some. He's forcing the issue a little bit. There's again, plenty of stuff on social media about, the way he's handled himself in certain situations. I mean, that's the whole separate issue. I don't know. I mean, it would have been hard to go up from where he was last year, winning the Heisman Trophy and having the sensational season that he had. But again, even last year, they didn't win the bowl game. They lost to Tulane. So I think teams are looking for this guy to win some big games. You think a guy's going to be a franchise quarterback and an all-time quarterback, and the word generational was thrown out when we talked about this guy. I mean, at some point, you got to win a big game, right? And he's really yet to do so. So, again, that gets into the nitpicky part of the draft where teams are really going to start. Yes, is Caleb talented? Yes. It doesn't take an expert scout to watch tape and watch games on TV and see this guy's super talented. But at the end of the day, you got to win. You got to lift your program. You got to rise above, bad defensive play. Again, he's going to be in a conversation with Drake May and some other guys. I mean, I don't think this is as clear cut as a lot of people made it out to be when we started the year, that he was just the number one guy. And I mean, early in the season, I think it was Emmanuel Acho put it out there that he should just shut it down and, get ready for the draft. I mean, to me, that would be a terrible thing for this guy to do right now. I think he's still got a lot to play for. To me, if I'm a team that wants to draft a franchise quarterback, there's still things I want to see him do.
Yes, and we're hearing that too much. Acho said that about Caleb Williams. J.C. Treader is saying that about potentially, maybe you've got an injury that maybe you're actually injured and not hurt, whatever. That's just dumb about the running back position. Jim, we know we dissected with you Penn State whenever they took on Ohio State. From the Michigan-Penn State matchup, Jim Harbaugh said in the preseason in camp, he legitimately believes there's 20 players that could be drafted, that are NFL players that could make an NFL roster that are on his roster currently. Do you see that? And I know that all 20 may not necessarily be or turn pro or be eligible. They may come back. Who knows? But how talented is Michigan from an NFL perspective compared to what we always think about Georgia, Alabama, Ohio State? And I'm just saying this based on where they are in the recruiting rankings, for instance, where they're a bit down in the teens compared to where the top recruiters are. 20 players, though, is legit.
Yeah, it'd be an all-time record, so it's certainly legit. I think a few things. You threw a lot at me there. I would say I think they are going to get some of these guys to come back. Talking to the guys up in Ann Arbor, I think they'll get a few of these guys back. I think a few of them haven't made the jump. Maybe that like our staff hope they would. I think so far the tape has been hard to really get a handle on because of the level of competition. I think a lot's been made of Michigan's schedule so far, and that's fair. I mean, it's hard. I mean, some of the teams they've played, they're not playing against NFL folks, so there hasn't been a lot of matchups. I think if you're a Michigan player, you got to be fired up for Saturday, and you got to be fired up for that last Saturday in November against the Buckeyes, because you can really, I mean, you can help yourselves those 2 weeks. You're finally getting a chance to have some NFL matchups. So yeah, I think that 20 was probably in that range, 15 to 20 to start the year. Again, I think some will come back. I think the difference between the Bama teams and the Georgia teams is a lot of that was high-end first and second round talent. I don't think this Michigan team has that. I think they have a lot of really good, solid football players that are more in that mid-round conversation. So I don't think Jim was wrong when he said that 20 players. I think you could have made a case for that preseason. But again, I don't think it's, a bunch of top 100 draft picks. I think it's more middle round guys. Not that there aren't a couple up in that range, but not the bulk of like Alabama. Back in the day, Alabama would have 12 guys drafted and 10 would be in the first 3 rounds. It's not like that.
Yeah, and 4 in the first, right? Like but I asked this because this is right up your alley, because you're not only you're identifying like those guys, you're identifying players who aren't necessarily receiving an invite to the NFL Combine, right? Like Kevin Byard went to the Senior Bowl. He wasn't invited to the Combine. He's drafted in the 3rd round. Are you identifying just off of pure traits, or is this like a recommendation of like, hey, we've got 5 or 6 teams that are like, we need to see this guy, and you've got a consensus of a small consensus that, okay, we're going to at least give this guy a shot against premier talent at the bowl and the practices?
Yeah, we always want to bring the best talent for sure, but that's a really good point. I mean, part of it too is letting these NFL teams see what they want to see. And yeah, I feel like I work for the 32 GMs. That's why I feel like I work for the city of Mobile, Alabama.
That's why it works.
And I feel like I work for the 32 GMs. Those are the 2 people I feel like I serve in this role. So, yeah, like last year, Tyson Bagent, the quarterback who's going to be starting tonight for the Chicago Bears. Could we have brought Aiden O'Connell from Purdue here, who's going to start this weekend for the Raiders? Yes, we could have, but Aiden was a 3-year starter in the Big Ten, and he and Tyson's cards were really, really close on our board. Why not bring the Division II kid who everyone needs to see against good competition and and let them make their evaluation? So when we get in those situations where it's close, we'll bring the Kevin Byard or someone like that really needs to prove themselves.
10 rookie quarterbacks set to start this weekend. The NFL record there. Other than Bagent, who we know that you invited, he's the D2 Heisman winner. Who are you impressed by so far of this group that you feel like is going to build on the second half of the season potentially?
Well, I mean, the layup, C.J. Stroud, he's been great. He's really surpassed my expectations. But I mean, it's hard. I think anyone would have sat here and you don't think any rookie quarterback's going to do what C.J. Stroud's done so far. He's been phenomenal. Yeah, and it's weird with this class. You're saying 10 rookies, and it really was a hard class last year for the Senior Bowl. I mean, of the 5 previous years that I've been in this role, it was our first year in 7 years. We didn't have a first rounder down here. And it was really like a draft of all middle round draft picks. I mean, these guys were all 4th, 5th, 6th round quarterbacks. So for 10 already to get on the field is kind of crazy to think. But I'll be interested to see how Bryce Young does tonight against the Chicago Bears. Bryce has had his moments, but I think right now he's getting overshadowed by CJ. I don't love the conversation that everyone's already saying writing Bryce Young off, but yeah, it's certainly an interesting year with all these young guys getting pushed on the field. I know that the teams that are playing these guys did not foresee these guys getting on the field so early.
Jim, just about 30, 45 seconds here. Chad, where is Carson Beck in the Heisman rankings now?
Vegas odds 5th. in the Heisman race right now, Carson Beck.
What do you make of Carson Beck in Georgia as they take on Ole Miss this weekend?
Yeah, good prospect. He's really played well the last month of the season. He's probably, if he came out in this year's draft, would be in that 3rd or 4th round range. We're hearing everything we're hearing coming out of Athens is they want him back in school. So I'm going to call Coach Smart and see what he wants us to do there with that invite. I'm guessing he'll want us to keep it here in Mobile and not send it. But yeah, he's played really well this last month.
Jim Nagy, the executive director of the Reese's Senior Bowl. Thanks for joining us on the backup time here, and we look forward to this. We seriously, every week, great insight.
All right, guys, have a great weekend. Thanks for putting me off a day.
No,
thanks,
man.
John.
I could get off the road.
Thanks for
guys.
accommodating. Yeah, Jim Nagy there. Busy time for him. 3 weeks left in the season, then it's bowl season.
Haven't even thought about Carson Beck as a pro prospect until that analysis there from Jim.
Where is Joe Milton as a pro prospect? Is he draftable now?
That's a good question.
Is he an undrafted? That's stunning to me, man.
Yeah, it was going into the year, he was kind of the guy that could skyrocket like an Anthony Richardson.
Just the build. Yes. Yeah.
I feel like someone's going to draft him.
I do too. Aiden O'Connell was supposed to be an undrafted free agent. He was drafted.
He was drafted in the 4th round.
I know.
Yeah. I could see someone
we could table that question for Jim next week. Coming up, more college discussion. Withrow's got his top 10 games of the college football weekend next on Hot Mic with Ed and Withrow.
Dabo Swinney ripping his own fans. Dabo Swinney at Clemson is, I don't know, they tell me that he's the guy that doesn't like the transfer portal because he's made some comments that weren't exactly supportive of it. Dabo Swinney has done a job at Clemson that very few thought could be done. Clemson is a town about this big. Well, I better do this, not that, because that's like a white power sign idiots say. But it's about that big. The state is South Carolina. The state is not Clemson. So, but Dabo Swinney put Clemson in rarefied air. If you, a couple years ago, were going to name me the 3 best college football teams before Georgia's run here, you'd say Alabama, Ohio State, and Clemson. That's kind of who it always came down to. It felt like. So Dabo Swinney is now the victim of something that is good in one way, but it's bad in another. Incredible expectations of your fan base, meaning 10-2 ain't good enough. It just ain't. You can say whatever you want, but it just ain't. We got to be better. What? We're not in the college football playoff? What? We're not winning a national champion? What? We're 4-2? That's only winning 67% of our games? Here's what Dabo had to say. If you don't go undefeated, people say you're losers, that you're terrible. Let me tell you something. This is why football coaches for years and years and years and years fought the college football playoff. We're at a point in time, and I hate that, where people, if you don't go undefeated, you're losers. You're terrible. It's just a terrible mindset. Honestly, maybe we need to lose a few games and lighten up the bandwagon. Sometimes the bandwagon get a little full. That's the one good thing about going through a little bit of so-called adversity is that you really find out who's with you and who's not. That's all crap. Let me explain to you Dabo Swinney's day, can I? Dabo Swinney probably wakes up around 5:30. Dabo Swinney smokes shit, shower, shave, shampoo, goes to the office. Probably has a meeting at 7. Dabo Swinney then is probably in different meetings with players or recruits or maybe the administration going and maybe watching film. Whatever. Then he has practice. Then after practice, he's doing the same thing. Then in the evening, he's making phone calls. Probably goes home around 10. At no point in time in his day, his week, his month, his year, is he finding out who's with us and who's not with us. It's not like there's a list. Now, maybe you find out what media member wants to rip you, but on a daily basis, a monthly basis, you're not finding out any of this crap. It's very simple. Coaches, if you want to know who's with you, understand that when you lose, nobody's really with you. If you want to know who's really with you, win. And then everybody's really with you. It's literally that simple. As my father used to say to me, Dan, we're with you, win or tie, and we ain't so sure about the tie. So shut up with that stuff, win some football games, and don't sweat it. Seriously, do yourself a favor. Work hard, grab yourself a glass of wine, go sit in your chair, and read a book instead of being on social media or worrying about who is with you and who is not with you.
Just like that. Final hours here, Thursday edition, Hot Mic with Hutton and Withrow across the OutKick Network. Fast-paced show today. Our thanks to Trey Wallace for joining us, Armando Salguero and Jim Nagy. If you missed those, you can find them on demand. Head over to the OutKick channel at YouTube. Search it out. Subscribe while you're there. Jed, based on the timetable of when news could come out on a potential suspension for Jim Harbaugh, discipline handed down to Michigan from the Big Ten and Tony Petitti, the commissioner, it could be just this hour, honestly, 5 o'clock East Coast. And with all the news that's been dropped with Michigan's response yesterday, if it's going to be something that affects Saturday's game against Penn State, need to let everyone know today.
Well, the longer it goes on that we don't have news today, as the afternoon gets later, I suspect we're not going to have anything suspension-wise this weekend.
We'll keep tabs on that.
That's good news for Michigan fans. That I don't think if there's not something said and reported by early evening at the latest, I just think that they're not ready to suspend Harbaugh or anyone else.
Yep. We'll keep tabs there, and we'll jump back into the headlines coming up, including the response from Michigan to the Big Ten and compared to what we've heard from Rutgers and Ohio State. That's coming up in about 20 minutes. But speaking of college football, Week 11.
You ready?
Week 11. It is time for Chad Withrow's top 10 games of the college football weekend.
Need more reasons to watch college football? It's time to bang some hats. Here's Chad Withrow's must-see games this weekend.
Very feisty weekend of college football, Hutton. I'm excited to unveil this top 10 this week. It's got a little bit of something for everyone, starting with game number 10. We talked about Coach Prime earlier and the Colorado Buffaloes. How about Arizona at Colorado? This game, a very rare 1 p.m. Central Time start for this one on Pac-12 Network. The Wildcats of Arizona, a 10.5-point favorite in this one. Shedeur Sanders is second nationally in passing yards, second only to Michael Penix Jr., obviously having a terrific season. Noah Fafita, the redshirt freshman, he's 5'11", but he plays like he's 6'5". Terrific young player for the Arizona Wildcats. Hutton, Arizona, under Jed Fish, one of the bigger surprises in college football this year. Currently a 10.5-point favorite on the road at Colorado. They've been terrific.
And this is a week after Deion has said, hey, I love the fact that my team didn't quit. I'm still questioning their passion going into the game. Can he get a grip on that? And if so, what does that mean for a potential upset for Colorado at home?
Yeah, it's...
Can they play 4 quarters?
Stay tuned. And wrong team favored.
Okay.
Not that anyone cares, considering I've scored 0 points and wrong team favored. But I may revisit this game at some point on wrong team favored.
If you don't select it, it will be under consideration.
Game number 9, Hutton. This is one that's not under consideration for me, but maybe, just maybe, because it is on the road, maybe the Kentucky Wildcats can give Alabama a scare. The 8th-ranked Crimson Tide on the road in Lexington to take on Kentucky. This is a noon Eastern Time, 11 a.m. Central kick on ESPN. Big question mark in this game. Can Kentucky limit explosives and make Alabama drive the football? Jalen Milroe has been terrific on the deep ball this year. Can they limit that, make Alabama drive? Maybe they make a mistake at that point. Devin Leary in the Kentucky offense got it going a little bit the last couple weeks. He was really good against Tennessee in a loss, carried that over. The offense looked better in an easy 24-3 win over Mississippi State this past weekend. Kentucky on the season with Ray Davis as their star running back, they are 6-1 when they just get to 75 yards rushing. 75 yards rushing. That is the marker.
Interesting.
The other two games they've lost, they've gone below that number. I think Alabama takes care of business, but it's always tricky when you go on the road in the SEC.
So you mentioned Devin Leary's been playing well recently. You know what? Who else has turned things around? Alabama.
Go ahead.
Who's officiating this game? That's all I need to know. Who's officiating this game? Which crew will be in Lexington as Bama visits? Because all of a sudden the Crimson Tide aren't having 15 penalties a game. That's a big flip from where we were the first 2 months of the season.
No holding penalties. Alabama doesn't hold anymore. No big issues in that regard.
That's the only way
that
Kentucky stays in it if Bama allows them to, based on the trends that have been there now for 2 years, where they have just dumb issues that are self-inflicted.
Feels like Alabama wins this one relatively easy unless it's a turnover fest for the Crimson Tide, which they're not prone to do. Game number 8, West Virginia at Oklahoma. Suddenly a big game in the Big 12. West Virginia, another one of those pleasant surprises this year. Neil Brown came into the season on the hot seat, done a good job with that Mountaineers program. Oklahoma, a 12.5-point favorite, a Fox game, 6 p.m. Central Time. Garrett Green of West Virginia, their quarterback, 10 touchdowns, 2 interceptions, 8 rushing touchdowns on the year. Dylan Gabriel matches that with rushing touchdowns, 8 on the year. Difference, 2,646 passing yards already, 20 touchdowns to 5 interceptions. Oklahoma better than West Virginia in every category. West Virginia won 37-7 last week against BYU. You look at where they are statistically, nothing overwhelms you about West Virginia, but they've got a good record. They've won games this year. Can they go on the road and scare Oklahoma in this game? Because I think statistically you look at it, and even with the 2 straight losses, the Sooners are superior.
Close for a half, is what the expectation. I'll also say this will show a lot about Brent Venables and the grip he has on the locker room after the loss this past weekend, but also just seeing Oklahoma fall down to 17 after being in the college football playoff reach. How does the locker room respond after last weekend in Bedlam?
Great question. We'll find out soon enough.
And they're back at home now.
Yeah. But coming into the year, we wouldn't think this would be a big game in the Big 12. But Neil Brown and West Virginia done a nice job with him on the hot seat coming into the season. Game number 7, USC. You got Caleb Williams in his mother's arms crying at the end of the last week's game. Season seems to be over for USC, or at least all hopes of a championship. He's despondent. How does he come back? How does this USC team come back? Because here's the deal, everyone. You get 12 of them. They all count. They all matter. You can't give up on a season because you've lost 3 games. You got to keep playing. Does USC show up and play? Because offensively, they're right there with Oregon. This is great offense versus great offense. 47.4 points per game versus 45.5 points per game. The difference, Hutton, is Oregon also has a defense, whereas USC absolutely does not. Oregon allowing teams only 16 points per game. On the flip side, USC, 35 points per game is what they're giving up. How about this for Oregon, too? Talk about mistakes being key in football games. Only 4 turnovers they've committed all year. The Oregon Ducks. I think Oregon rolls in this one, Hutton. I think we start to see a little bit of laydown from USC.
This is the late kickoff on Saturday night.
It's a Hutton special. 9:30 Central Time on Fox.
Oh, perfect. Also, just from this perspective, and I buy into the Pac-12 is going to beat up on each other. If you buy that, USC wins this game. If they're just going to eat their own. But USC hasn't been winning these, sprints and marathons on the scoreboard. Oregon has been clutch.
I think this game will tell a lot about Lincoln Riley.
That's a good point too.
In this program, how they bounce back after some disappointment. Do they show up? Do they make this a game? They've got the offense to do it. We're going to tell a lot about the character of this USC team and program.
You know who else is thrilled as they watch? Phil Knight, because both schools are Nike programs. Caleb Williams and Bo Nix in his gear.
Bronny James of USC basketball also
there you go.
Part of Nike. Game number 6, let's go back to the Big 12. Number 7, Texas, a 10-point road favorite at TCU. 6:30 Central Time kickoff on ABC. Texas averaging 34 points per game. TCU almost 30 points per game. Jonathan Brooks, terrific running back for the Longhorns, already over 1,000 yards, 8 touchdowns on the season. Defensively is where there's a difference in this one. Texas allowing more than a touchdown less per game than TCU. TCU got off to that rough start, that home loss to Colorado to start the year. Big opportunity, though, Hutton. If you can beat the big, bad Texas Longhorns in that state, that is a triumphant achievement that Sonny Dykes is trying to accomplish on Saturday night.
Up 27-7, and they end up going to overtime against Kansas State a week ago. And Malik Murphy didn't play all that well. 2 interceptions, normally very optimistic and upbeat. He wasn't that post-game. This needs to be a statement game for Murphy as he leads things for the Longhorns offense, potentially the Big 12 championship game and to a college football playoff appearance without Quinn Ewers available.
Almost
day to day.
Almost texted Kelly in Vegas, who was a big K-State fan and grad at that game last week when they were down big, and then decided to hold off, and rightfully
well
so.
Done.
And K-State came back and made a game out of it. Yeah.
The last thing she needs is more ammo.
Yeah, how about those Wildcats, I was going to say. And then I decided smartly to back off until the game was played out. Game number 5, Hutton. Honestly, this game's 5th on the list by name only. Miami at Florida State.
It shouldn't be.
That elicits a response. Number 4, Florida State, a 2-touchdown favorite, 2:30 on ABC. Keon Coleman and Johnny Wilson have been terrific for Jordan Travis this year as receivers for Florida State. Miami leads the all-time series 35-32. Florida State won this game last year 45-3. Can Miami make this a game? That is the question. On the road, this is a rivalry game. Can the Hurricanes show something that, hey, they've won a couple games in overtime. Granted, Virginia, then they beat Clemson in overtime. Lost last week to NC State. What is the bounce back like for Mario Cristobal in Miami?
And Cristobal was mum this week when he was asked about Tyler Van Dyke and whether or not he'd be available and if he would start. That goes to their freshman, Emory Williams. You know, so again, it shouldn't be by name only. This team should at worst be 7-2.
Yeah.
At worst. And instead they're 6-3 against unbeaten FSU.
Game number 4. Back to the Pac-12. Utah, 18th in the country.
Here we go.
At number 5, Washington. This is another Jonathan Hutton special. Great offense versus great defense. Who's going to win in this one? 2:30 Central Time on Fox. Washington, 4th-ranked passing attack nationally. Michael Penix Jr., my favorite to win the Heisman. Probably the favorite to win the Heisman right now.
Yep.
Going up against the 8th-ranked defense nationally with the Utes of Utah. Who wins out in this one, Hutton? Offense versus defense?
Offense in Washington. Utah, good, not great. Washington, I still believe, can beat anyone in the country. And because of that, I'm taking the Huskies here, despite the fact that, I mean, Utah's going into a must-win situation, and they're not afraid to play in a really tough environment.
No.
Defense normally helps you in that. So I think this is a great game. I just think Washington pulls it out like they have throughout the year.
I love Washington and still thought long and hard about wrong team favored on this one with Utah, but I'm going to abstain from that. I think Washington finds a way to get it done. Game number 3, 13th ranked in the latest college football playoff rankings, Tennessee Vols on the road, a 1-point favorite at number 14, Missouri, right next to each other in those college football ratings, 2:30 CBS kickoff.
We're undervaluing Missouri's performance last weekend in this, aren't we?
Oh, yeah. They were down 2 in the 4th quarter, ended up losing by 9.
But what does Vegas know?
What does Vegas know?
Tennessee on the road favored.
Let me tell you a little bit about what Vegas may know.
Okay.
Tennessee is the best rushing offense in the SEC, and they pair that with the best rushing defense in the SEC. That's the old adage in this conference. If you run the football and you stop the run, you're going to win a lot of games. And Tennessee is 7-2 right now by running the ball and being really stout against the run. They just racked up 650 yards, albeit against UConn, but that's still an impressive performance offensively. Joe Milton getting it going. Here's what you need to know about Missouri. They got lit up by LSU, a really good offense they faced. Memphis passed all over them. They won that game, but they could not stop the Memphis pass. Kentucky moved the ball, tons of yards. Kentucky turned the ball over. That was their issue in that game. Brady Cook, when he throws 2 interceptions, they're 0-2 on the season. Every other game he's thrown 1 interception, they've won so far. So that's also a key marker in this one. Brady Cook was very good against Tennessee a year ago. What's Luther Burden's health going into this game? This is a really good matchup, and I think one of those classic kind of toss-up games.
We'll get to your top 2 in a moment. I'm going to ask this, though. In terms of, we know Heupel wanted to beat Shane Beamer's Gamecocks.
Yep.
Where does Drinkwitz put Tennessee on the list of, I want this one?
Well, I mean, he should want it bad because I think Tennessee put up 63 points at Mizzou in year 1 for Heupel in an absolute embarrassing blowout. And then last year, Missouri was right there at halftime playing really well, and Tennessee sprinted ahead of them and scored late against Missouri when they had the chance to impress some college football playoff voters.
If you ask Josh
he wants
Heupel
it.
preseason, which game are you circling? It was South Carolina.
This is one for Missouri.
I think Eli Drinkwitz would circle Tennessee.
Totally agree. He's got a great chance in this game, and Vegas tells us that as well.
Yes.
Game number 2, number 9 Ole Miss at number 2 Georgia. 10.5-point favorite, the Bulldogs. 6 p.m. kickoff on ESPN. Can Ole Miss get to Carson Beck? Mizzou had 3 sacks a week ago. Ole Miss's front 7 better at getting to the quarterback. I think that's a key in this one. Affecting Carson Beck.
Yes, but he's been affected in the first half of games. And I keep doubting him, and I don't want to anymore because they come out of the second half and they pick up the pace. They could be down 11 against South Carolina. No big deal. They just execute.
Yeah.
They come out and just go and score. They drive and score. And I just don't think Ole Miss can keep up with that. You have to match them and then get something in return with Georgia messing things up in the final 2 quarters. I haven't seen them do that. I think this is a typical Ole Miss on the road performance where for a half it could be close.
Yeah.
But Georgia's going to Georgia in the second half. They're going to win.
Ole Miss has the offense to pull it off. Can they get to Carson Beck is my big question.
And
game number 1, Hutton, and we're going to get to it when we come back.
Yes.
It's Michigan at Penn State.
I want to dive into this.
Let's break down this game because this is the opportunity for James Franklin and Penn State to do what all the Big Ten wants done, which as the clock ticks, tick, 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 tick. As we get later in the day, I don't think the Big Ten's doing anything to Michigan. It's in the hands of Penn State now to get it done.
We preview Michigan, Penn State next on Hot Mic with Hutton and Withrow across the OutKick Network.
Quote, a good state champion caliber high school boys team would smoke the best team in the WNBA. Then this weekend, after the video was posted and the critics, of course, came for him, he doubled down on what he said, posting this on X. Quote, it's sexist to say women's basketball players aren't as good as men's. That was a question, obviously. It's my opinion, and I'm putting $1 million behind it. If I'm wrong, the WNBA team can take my money and make more from one game than they do for the entire season. Okay, so let's get into this because obviously there's a lot of people out there who are just assuming that Clay is being sexist, that he is trying to really punk the WNBA because let's be honest, the ratings for the WNBA aren't great, which is exactly why Clay made the joke at the end of that. If you were to give them $1 million for losing the bet, that would be more than the WNBA would make regularly for one game under normal circumstances. But the fact remains that men and women biologically super different, and that's what he's talking about. We even look at a boys' high school basketball team and the makeup of their players, what they're able to do, their size, their skills, and look at the WNBA players who are oftentimes much older. They're professional basketball players, but still, the level of competition would not at all be on the same playing field. So, Chris, let's get into that. What is your take on this? The fact that people would say that, Clay, you're being sexist, when reality remains men and women, super different, even at very different ages, different places in their careers, there would be no matchup whatsoever.
I don't even think it's questionable. I love that Clay took it to him. I think a lot of times silence speaks louder than words. The Las Vegas Aces haven't said anything in response yet. Mm-hmm. So, look, you're right. I dug into the rosters, the Las Vegas Aces, and then, look, I've spent some time training at IMG Academy. I work with athletes at a school called Lou High, which is one of the top programs in the country. And we have guards 6'4", 6'5", 6'6". We're on the Aces. The tallest players are 6'3" and 6'4", and those are their bigs. So they don't even have anybody to really account for the bigs on the male teams. And I don't know that it's how in any way is this a sexist
question.
thing to say. Yeah.
Well, I have a woman, I think, who will be able to help answer this question. She is super smart. She's super intelligent. I am a big fan of her. Everybody, you're also a big fan of her. We all are. It just has to be said. So let's go ahead and bring in the woman of the hour, Riley Gaines. Hello, Riley. I'm happy to see you again. I feel like I get to spend so much time with you these days.
I know, right? Very good to see you, and I will say it is rainy here as well, which just sucks.
Okay, so are you, I know the last time we talked, you were like bouncing all over the place. Where are you right now?
I'm actually in Nashville, but headed to New York today. So I'll be on deck.
Okay, well, welcome. You get to go from rain to rain.
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. So, Riley, let's get into the topic that we were just discussing. Obviously, Clay being a little bit sarcastic in the way that he framed the question, but he's saying he's willing to make a bet that the WNBA champions, still being the champions, professional basketball players, would not be able to hold a candle to any high school boys basketball team in the country. Is he being sexist, or is he just speaking facts that men and women are very different in terms of what they are capable of athletically?
Boom. Right there. It's not sexist to say men and women are different. It, like you said, it's reality, it's truth, it's common sense, it's logic, it's reasoning. We all know it.
Our location, Yeehaw Beer and Old Smoky Moonshine. Hot Mike with Honey with Row rolls on across the OutKick network. Chad, my perception of Penn State going into a big game, vastly different. 180 on the way I was going into the matchup against Ohio State compared to this one against Michigan. Despite all of the reason for distraction with the Wolverines, it's been everything but that.
Yeah, they just could not do anything on offense. That's what keeps popping in my mind is Drew Aller really ready to do enough against this defense to win this game? I don't know.
I don't think so. But a lot of the NFL scouts, general manager, I mean, they think he's a dude, you know? Like, when does that come to fruition?
Well, look,
it's very early.
Even with all the Stein stealing scandal and everything else, Michigan's got the #1 scoring defense in America, and they put up 40-plus points in 5 straight.
Yeah.
Even after this news leaked. So their schedule has been really bad, but they have thoroughly dominated everyone so far. So I think Penn State against Maryland. Maryland does not have the best offensive line, but it's middle of the pack Big Ten. It's not terrible. Penn State generated 6 sacks and 12 tackles for loss in that game. Can they duplicate that against J.J. McCarthy and at least speed him up? Offensively, I think that's a key in this one. I can't trust Drew Aller to do what is necessary against this defense to win. And I think he's a talent. I think he's going to be really good by the time he's done at Penn State. I don't think Penn State is there yet.
I don't just because I haven't seen James Franklin win this game. Going into a massive opportunity. Chad, mention again your thoughts on if Penn State wins, what it does for James Franklin and the perception of him as the head coach of the Nittany Lions. Because he's been the #3 coach in the conference because he hasn't been battling with the top 2.
Well, it's going to be memorable for Penn State fans regardless. This is a chance to be memorable nationwide because this is the topic, not just in college football, but in all of sports right now. And people are going to be watching to see if Jim Harbaugh gets humbled in all of this. Penn State has a chance to do that on Saturday in the big noon kickoff game on Fox, 11 a.m. Central Time. This is one that everyone's going to remember. This is not – Penn State fans are going to remember it if you beat Michigan regardless.
Yes.
This is one we will all remember, and that's the opportunity. I wish this game was at night in Happy Valley. It would be much more lit. That's a really old term.
Well done.
But, by the way, I was reading a New York Times story today about all the things that the next generation of kids say, the words. I didn't know any of them. There were 8 words they use that apparently are very popular. Didn't know what any of them meant, so that's why I use words like lit.
Chad.
But it would be more lit at night if this game was played at night, but we'll have to settle for noon. It's going to be one Hutton, though, that's memorable one way or the other. And on the flip side, if they lay an egg like they did against Ohio State at home and they lose 30-6 in this game, let's say, guess what everyone's going to do? They're going to remember James Franklin and Penn State falling on their face again.
And Michigan will turn around and release the numbers on, so since we no longer have Conor Stallions, here's the point differential.
Yeah. They're also going to release a dossier on how Penn State shared Michigan signs with, Minnesota at some point or someone else.
By the way, you mentioned Gen X. Do you know the current generation is it's now Alpha?
That's it, yeah. So Generation Alpha is the one that I saw. I need to find.
They're going to turn around our
and I'm going to
Generation Alpha.
One of these words I saw that I read.
Back on track.
It was a tweet from the New York Times about a story that was trying to catch people up to the times on Generation Alpha's terminology. And there was one, I'm like, I don't even know how to pronounce this the way it's spelled. I'm going to find it and read. Hutton's a lot more hip than I am.
No.
There's a chance maybe there's a chance maybe that you've heard of some of these. Maybe Davey has also.
If it's astrology, Davey's watched
Davey's like 14 years younger than I am, and I don't think he's even heard of these words. My God, the New York Times tweets or posts a lot on X.
Are you? Do you feel 14 years older than Davey?
No, I do not. But I don't know how Davey feels.
Oh,
tired.
Well, I see how Davey moves around, and I definitely don't move around like I'm 14 years older than Davey.
That was a foot issue, though.
Yeah, I had surgery 2 weeks ago. Actually, I got to go back to the doctor tomorrow.
Well, even before that,
you lip in here, Chad's like, man,
you even before
so
that,
old.
Even before that, you were kind of moving slow. So I don't think it's just the foot issue.
I just take it one step at a time, man. There's no reason to get in a rush.
Yeah, you're not a quick guy. I would
want to hear
not
these words.
refer to you as quick. All right, ready, Davey?
Yeah, let's go.
I found it.
Davey's hip.
Do you know what a GYAT is? GYAT. What about a Rizzler? RIZZLER.
Rizzler. Yeah, he or she, they got Riz, so they're a Rizzler. Riz is like you got game.
Okay, so it's like someone with game. It's a playa from back when we were kids, Hutton, right? By the way, for Generation Alpha, that's PLAYA. Playa. That's a Rizzler? Okay, I'm glad you know that. Do you know precisely if one pays a, quote, phantom tax? FANUM tax.
Never heard of it.
No, I'm not familiar
with that term. Is now phantom?
Well, this is from the New York Times. Welcome to the language of Generation Alpha, the cohort coming right behind Gen Z that is bamboozling its elders with terms all their own. Phantom tax. FANUM. Which makes me think of phantom tax. Is it a play on that?
So Generation Alpha, the earliest was born 2010. So they're 14 years old, 13 years old.
That's the oldest version of this, you're saying.
Yeah, so they're saying phantom.
Phantom tax, Urban Dictionary, is looking elegant or majestic and sexy.
The phantomous man
Paying
alive.
a phantom tax is looking good when nude. Looking classy in your birthday suit. Phantom meaning phantom, as I guessed.
I just don't know how. Why can't we just say phantom?
What was the first one I said to?
The Rizzler?
No, not the Rizzler. The one you didn't know. Oh, it was a GYAT.
I hear that. I think it's jihad, but
yeah, I don't think it's that. Maybe it is. I mean, who knows what these kids are talking about today?
GYAT.
GYAT on TikTok is said to be an inside joke between guys.
Wow. I mean, we would never refer. We're not going to make up a word that we can always. We already
This
have
is
a
amazing.
word for.
GIOT is a shortened term. I don't know how this is shorter, but shortened term for GD, spelled out, as in something guys would say when they see an attractive girl that they think is attractive. They say GIOT.
Ryan Leach is texting me. He says he seems to be up to date on a lot of these
That
terms.
will really reel in the beautiful women right there.
Do you think if we just started saying,
especially in middle school,
these words all the time,
13-year-olds,
would this like push our algorithm younger if we just use these words all the time? We come in on a Monday and it's like, Hutton, GIOT, did you see that Ole Miss game-winning field goal? Can we start with that?
That was
that
was the Riz, Chad.
Is that going to help our algorithm?
Oh, it's not going to help my my mental health.
I'm watching. We're on a tangent now, so I'll just keep going. I'm watching the Republican debate last night on NBC.
Yeah.
And there were more talks of algorithms on that thing when I was watching than I've ever heard, and it's so odd to me. They were talking about TikTok algorithms the whole time and how we need to ban TikTok in America and what the algorithms are doing. And I'm thinking, what is this? What is this world we've created that we live in? There's nothing real anymore.
Nonsensical.
I am shocked we have food to eat. Like that there's someone on Earth that goes into the ground and plants things and produces actual sustenance for people.
Well, that's the vast majority of Americans. They actually, are somewhere in the common sense realm and not vastly left or right. In one way or the other, playing to the one base instead of the majority.
Chad's been losing a lot of money listening to my betting algorithms.
You can't get everyone to agree on that. How many times have we played the farmer line? By the way, I grew up on a farm. That's always the go-to, right?
Yeah.
At some point, you got to go to TikTok and mention China.
But the reason the reason people are far right or far left is in large part because of algorithms.
Well, that's what I mean.
Because look, the people I know that put stuff in the ground, they're really far right. Most of them that work with their hands. Well, that I know. And
but they're also reacting to, and again, I'm speaking from experience and all my friends in my hometown. They're also reacting to the algorithms that are being pushed to get everyone talking about this instead of that.
No, I heard someone came trick or treating around the neighborhood on Halloween. Brought to me a sports story that I just had to look at him. He said, "Did you hear about this, and this that happened?" And I just looked at it and said, that can't be right. I said, "I've not heard that, and that sounds really far-fetched." And I just looked it up online. There was nothing online at any credible site about it. I'm thinking, you got had by someone pushing a completely fake story into your Facebook account. Like, this is what happened. And you got had by that. It's sad, though.
It is. And you look at it, too. You talk about it from the algorithm standpoint. A lot of times, you're just going to get within your own echo chamber, so you're not willing to listen to other points of view or other ideas.
The app and company, they want you to come back to the app.
Yeah, I want to get back to using the term.
They want it to elicit emotion instead of
logic.
Thank you. Yes.
Yeah, people want emotion, not logic. You know what? I want to get back to the word branding. And worry more about that. That was one that maybe that's like an early aughts phrase about branding being on point. I'd love to be more concerned with that than algorithms. But I am watching that debate, and I will have to say, Vivek Ramaswamy, I think I pronounced that right. The fact that he takes his first question and just immediately attacks the people that are moderating the debate, I'm like, this is a bold strategy. And I'm not talking about just like half measure taking a shot at something. I don't even know what the question was, but this dude went on there and said, we should not be on NBC right now. Like, you should not be doing this. Joe Rogan should be doing it. Elon Musk should be moderating this. You are not qualified. None of you should be here. And I'm like, well, that's a way to start it with them. And I mean, they handled it. They were very calm. And I think Lester Holt was doing it. It's like,
oh, yes.
Okay, well,
or
and people were cheering.
NBC.
He's like, yeah, we're not going to respond to that. So next question, how many ships exactly should you build in the Navy? something along. Give me the exact number of ships that need to be built in the next 10 years.
The answer, and he responds, GIOT.
Yeah. And then he said, I think he actually said GIOT just to get back in the algorithm.
The Riz.
He did say that he knows a lot more about the algorithm than the other candidates. I think that was one of his selling points.
I think Donald Trump knows the algorithm pretty well.
Well, someone around him does, for sure.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, it doesn't have.
His algorithm was let's not
the youngest on stage to know it.
His algorithm was, don't go to this debate. What does the algorithm say? Go host something over here and then badmouth everyone on social media that you're banned from.
Were there any more words on that list, Chad, that we didn't get
That
to?
was it. I'm not a New York Times subscriber, so you knew one of the three, Davey, so congratulations. That was one more than me and Hutton knew. I am a little bit sad you didn't know Giat, though. That seems like one you should have known. You said Ryan Leach is texting and he knows?
He knows
He uses the word. By the way, Chad is
absolutely... The Phantom thing makes no sense to me.
He says Phantom tax is taking other people's food, reference of a person named Phantom in a popular YouTube group. Then he said, this is killing me, LMFAO.
Chad is going to live this language, though, with his kids.
Look,
his kids are Generation Alpha.
I've said it a lot of times. I'll do whatever. I'll be your clown. I'll be your hero. I'll be whatever's needed.
Well,
if I have to use this language, Hutton, to survive in these modern times, I will gladly adapt this language.
But then do you turn into cool dad or uncool dad whenever they get to the age of, like, stop talking like me, Dad?
Oh, I think it's just completely uncool even now.
How often?
Like, I don't think there's ever an era where I use these words.
If our dad said bruh, how would we have reacted in high school?
Oh,
I would have hated it.
Yeah, I would have.
What's up, bruh?
I would have demanded a hardship driver's license at 15 so I could drive myself to school.
How often?
If my dad said that at 14, maybe.
Yeah. So I wouldn't use Giat or Riz.
I don't see anything.
Quickly.
Oh, okay, now I get it. I'm seeing the tax referring to something about food that someone's eating. But see, when I look up Phantom, that's weird. Urban Dictionary has a completely different meaning for it.
Of course it does.
We can't even get Hutton. We can't even get consensus online with the Gen Alpha's damn vocabulary. There's different meanings for that even.
But because the oldest is 13, that's why we can't get a consensus online. You have to go to Reddit for that, I guess. Maybe that's a dark web thing now.
Oh my gosh.
I can tell you right now, people our age aren't going to get it.
If I were to say that looks sus, do you know what that means?
Yeah, suspect.
Yeah, okay, there you go.
That's easy. Come on.
I mean,
give us something harder than that.
Throwing you a bone there.
Urban Dictionary says phantom tax. The definition says, honestly, I have no bleeping clue what this means. So if someone could make a definition, that would be amazing.
Well, someone asked
this
their child
is at urbandictionary.com. That's the definition.
Ask your son or daughter what this means, please, and let everyone else know.
Well, my daughters are in Gen Alpha.
That's what I just said. You're going to live this language.
I'm going to ask her tonight. We got a softball team banquet tonight. I'll ask all the girls.
We preview Thursday Night Football and more next.
Quote, a good state champion caliber high school boys team would smoke the best team in the WNBA. Then this weekend, after the video was posted and the critics, of course, came for him, he doubled down on what he said, posting this on X. Quote, it's sexist to say women's basketball players aren't as good as men's. That was a question, obviously. It's my opinion, and I'm putting $1 million behind it. If I'm wrong, the WNBA team can take my money and make more from one game than they do for the entire season. Okay, so let's get into this because obviously there's a lot of people out there who are just assuming that Clay is being sexist, that he is trying to really punk the WNBA because, let's be honest, the ratings for the WNBA aren't great, which is exactly why Clay made the joke at the end of that. If you were to give them $1 million for losing the bet, that would be more than the WNBA would make regularly for one game under normal circumstances. But the fact remains that men and women biologically super different, and that's what he's talking about. We even look at a boys' high school basketball team and the makeup of their players, what they're able to do, their size, their skills, and look at the WNBA players who are oftentimes much older. They're professional basketball players, but still, the level of competition would not at all be on the same playing field. So, Chris, let's get into that. What is your take on this? The fact that people would say that, Clay, you're being sexist, when reality remains men and women, super different, even at very different ages, different places in their careers, there would be no matchup whatsoever.
I don't even think it's questionable. I love that Clay took it to him. I think a lot of times silence speaks louder than words. The Las Vegas Aces haven't said anything in response yet. Mm-hmm. So, look, you're right. I dug into the rosters, the Las Vegas Aces, and then, look, I've spent some time training at IMG Academy. I work with athletes at a school called Lou High, which is one of the top programs in the country. And we have guards 6'4", 6'5", 6'6". We're on the Aces. The tallest players are 6'3" and 6'4", and those are their bigs. So they don't even have anybody to really account for the bigs on the male teams. And I don't know that it's how in any way is this a sexist
question.
thing to say. Yeah.
Well, I have a woman, I think, who will be able to help answer this question. She is super smart. She's super intelligent. I am a big fan of her. Everybody, you're also a big fan of her. We all are. It just has to be said. So let's go ahead and bring in the woman of the hour, Riley Gaines. Hello, Riley. I'm happy to see you again. I feel like I get to spend so much time with you these days.
I know, right? Very good to see you, and I will say it is rainy here as well, which just sucks.
Okay, so are you, I know the last time we talked, you were like bouncing all over the place. Where are you right now?
I'm actually in Nashville, but headed to New York today. So I'll be on deck.
Okay, well, welcome. You get to go from rain to rain.
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. So, Riley, let's get into the topic that we were just discussing. Obviously, Clay, being a little bit sarcastic in the way that he framed the question, but he's saying he's willing to make a bet that the WNBA champions, still being the champions, professional basketball players, would not be able to hold a candle to any high school boys basketball team in the country. Is he being sexist, or is he just speaking facts that men and women are very different in terms of what they are capable of athletically?
Boom. Right there. It's not sexist to say men and women are different. It, like you said, it's reality, it's truth, it's common sense, it's logic, it's reasoning. We all know it.
Hot Mic with Henry with our rolls on. 6th and Peabody, our location. Yeehaw Beer and Old Smoky Moonshine hosting the OutKick studios here. Chad, so you've got Ryan Day and Greg Schiano denying reports that they were spoon-fed signals by Purdue. Meanwhile, Michigan has said, hey, yeah, Conor Stallions is the guy, and it's just Conor Stallions. And don't open up Pandora's box if, hey, Tony, Big Ten shouldn't do this because how do you know that no one else has been doing this? And if you levy a harsh penalty, you're going to have to do that for everyone. Well, is there a penalty for Central Michigan at all? Is anyone going to just ask the question, how long does it take to find out why or how Conor Stallions is on your sideline in Central Michigan gear wearing Nike shoes for an Adidas program?
I don't think there should be a big penalty for them if they cooperate with Big Ten and the NCAA.
But there's no indication they are. They kind of brush it off by saying, yeah, we're looking into finding out who this is.
Who got him the pass? I mean, look, if he got it under false pretenses and said he was someone else and came with his own,
there's no way. He's carrying a clipboard.
I know.
He's talking to the offensive line coach. I know you know this. They know that too.
Yes, but also, like, if they were using him during the game to help because he had Michigan State's deal, that's a separate issue. But if it's his buddy that got it for him because he's on the staff or he's an analyst or whatever, I don't care as much about the Central Michigan part as much as the principle of we have allowed their AD to say, oh, that looks bad, we'll investigate it, and then just go away. And no one's asking them a thing.
Even just a flippant pass isn't an excuse. And the reason for that is he had the same access that a sideline reporter would have, that a photographer would have, that a former player would have with a visitor sideline pass in East Lansing. The difference is he's decked out in Central Michigan gear, team-issued gear that the other staff's wearing. So that's why you have to look into it if you truly don't know. But if you know, you just say you're looking into it and you never respond to anything. But I don't know if, to my knowledge, I mean, I haven't seen anything where they're being peppered with questions about it. It's just kind of like, yeah, it was him. He's wearing sunglasses. Check out the blinking light.
I just hate how there's no urgency when something big happens. Like Central Michigan is never in the national spotlight. Never. Like, when was the last time they had a national story? This was a national story, and they saw it, and their AD, she said, yeah, we're going to investigate it immediately. Jim McElwain answered one question about it after a Maction game on a Tuesday night or Wednesday or whenever.
Yeah. Who has connection to Michigan.
And now they're just allowed to, okay, well.
I know.
No one's going to ask a question. No one's going to, hey, can I get a follow-up on that? Like, who covers Central Michigan? Who's sending something to someone in the athletic department saying, can you give us an update on who that was? Like, someone's got to be dogged on this stuff and keep asking the question. I think, I don't know. It's very odd.
The last time they were in the true national spotlight would have been Corey Davis as a top, 5 pick in the NFL draft? Is that right? The wide receiver? That's the last time.
Yeah. But also, we still weren't talking about Central Michigan then.
Right. No, I agree.
No. Western Michigan.
No, you're right.
So that was PJ Fleck. Oh,
that's right. Yeah. So, Chad, the flip side of it is, why is no one digging? Well, this is your typical, by and large, there are some great reporting and great reporters. By and large, state to state in the college football realm, you don't have a lot of people digging on anything, right? Michigan, the state of Michigan, and the reporting there on what is going on in Ann Arbor is no different than what would go on in Athens or in Tuscaloosa, by and large, right? Where you don't have the allegations, the video evidence. No one's going to, if this were UAB in Alabama, would it be treated the same way? Central Michigan and Michigan. Where you have an Alabama staffer on the sideline at UAB.
And I would just like to get to a place where...
I think it would be. I think that because you don't want to... You're not trying to hurt your standing with whatever you're doing.
I would just like to get to a place where if you are in charge of an athletic department or a football program, you feel some urgency when something like that happens, just to come out and say what happened. Like, just say it. Like, someone on that staff gave him the pass, okay? We have suspended this person. We're further evaluating it. Or he filed for it under false pretense. Say whatever you want other than, guys, we don't know. We're going to investigate who this is in this photo. Yet everyone knows it's him.
Well,
but no one says it officially.
And the other
if
thing
I have
too,
one more reporter on here that says, we think that's no, it's Conor Stallions. You know why I know that? Because no one says it's not Conor Stallions. If it wasn't, how easy would it be for the Central Michigan AD to say, hey, that's our buddy Bo that actually comes to the game sometimes?
Yeah.
Of course it's Conor Stallions. Just say it. It's just weird to me that people don't get out ahead of anything anymore.
That's our buddy Bo, who's wearing sunglasses and just happens to have the video on the glasses.
Yeah, he's got some eyesight problems.
Yeah,
so that's
issues.
it's like an infrared thing that helps him see the game
at night.
Come on.
Yeah. I mean, the other thing too is it's from the Big Ten perspective, they care about what was going on the opposite sideline for Michigan State, right? It's about how the competitive advantage or the perceived competitive advantage of what a potential staffer at Michigan was doing on the Central Michigan sideline in order to gain some advantage against one of their member institutions. That would be the reason to look into it from the Big Ten perspective. NCAA perspective, now you're looking into Central Michigan. That's the difference. I don't know if the Big Ten's digging on why Central Michigan did anything. The NCAA should be doing that.
Yeah, Allie says...
We'll find out in 4 years.
At the end of the day, it's every team for themselves. I'm sure internally they're figuring it out, but you'd be crazy to participate in this media blank storm cycle.
Well,
I get that, but again...
They're participating in what's being alleged, though.
Yeah, they released a statement. They did respond to the media bleep storm cycle and said, yeah, we're going to investigate this. Well... This was what, a week and a half? I feel like this has been going on for a month. It was probably like 8 days ago. Just say what it is. Like, I don't understand.
It was the previous weekend. So because they played on Tuesday night, that's why McElwain.
This is not, to me, this is not a Central Michigan issue. I don't care about Central Michigan's piece in this. What I care about and what the Big Ten and the NCAA cares about is what is the extent of Conor Stallions' misdeeds. Central Michigan is a key player in this to find out what it was. How did he get the pass? What exactly was he doing? You're the AD. You can figure this out quickly and then release a statement or do an interview or do something. Don't just go silent.
The issue I have is not either silent or I don't know who that is. That's what Jim McElwain said. You've got Harbaugh saying, I knew nothing about this. And then it's just kind of, well, they didn't know. Can't prove it. And that's what everyone's saying. That's what Ohio State and Rutgers are saying. They're just like, no, we didn't participate. Try and prove it. Michigan will, by the way.
I would love for someone to post the Michigan letter to the Big Ten. I want to know what the evidence is on Ohio State and Rutgers that they have, that Ohio State is adamantly saying, Ryan Day is, no, I've checked with compliance people, I've talked to staff, we didn't do it. So what do they have against Ohio State that Ohio State saying is false? And what else are they claiming?
Yeah, and they're even going to they're pointing out point spreads and point differential before and after.
Yeah.
And even pointing to the conference. It's just some of the stuff they're saying is just ridiculous.
Well, it's also it's funny to me. Jake is in our YouTube chat. It's a big Michigan guy, and he keeps saying, maybe someone from Central Michigan made a deal for some vacuums in return for in-game scouting.
That's good. Maybe with Lake Forum, though.
But I want to point this out because I get it. But what you're doing here is trying to make Conor Stallions a crazy person that was a rogue one-man band, okay? Your head coach hired him. He's the head of the football program.
And he's so good. He's in Central Michigan.
He met with him. He hired him. There's text messages talking about meeting with the head coach before he got hired. Okay, so let's not just make this Conor Stallions is a nut. And Blake Corum probably signed on to something maybe he didn't know about, is my guess, on this LLC. I want to know what else is going on there. So, yes, that's funny, but let's not act like this is just one crazy guy.
Ward Manuel in the letter, just a brief snippet here, wrote and fired a warning shot to the Big Ten. The conference should act cautiously when setting precedent given the reality that in-person scouting, collusion among opponents, and other questionable practices may well be far more prevalent than believed. That's part of it. Chad, tonight, Thursday Night Football. Is the weekend officially here, given the fact it's Carolina, Chicago on Thursday Night Football?
I mean, look, the weekend's here no matter what. It's football season.
Okay.
I advise everyone to celebrate however they wish. And if your celebration features paying attention to every second of this awful NFL game tonight, that Al Michaels, by the way, with his tone, will tell you even more about how awful this game is.
What if all of a sudden he's the opposite?
Then
he's
how
all
about
of a sudden just treating it like the Super Bowl.
I think it would be funny if he just went over the top and was sarcastic about it.
What a 5-yard run.
I have never seen quarterback play in the NFL in my 60 years of broadcasting the way I've seen it tonight. How long has Al Michaels been at it? It's got to be close to 60, right?
I mean,
he started right out of Arizona State, 22. How old is that guy?
He's 78.
Okay, so yeah, 50.
And he's coming back next year. He's making $1 million a game, roughly.
56 years. He's been around.
He's my favorite.
It says he started in 1964.
There you go. Well done, Chad.
So 60 this coming year.
Be 60 this year. In my 60 years of broadcasting, I've never seen a quarterback like Tyson Bagent. This is the best quarterback I've ever covered.
Davey, what's the over-under for tonight? Do you know?
We're sitting at 38.
Take the under. Take the under. Bears, by the way, they have their own first-round pick next year. They also have Carolina's. So either way, they're winning because Carolina's going to hurt themselves or help themselves. But by helping themselves, they'll hurt Chicago's chances of helping themselves, if that makes sense. Either way, they're going to move up in the draft order, which is great. They're 2-7, Carolina 1-7. By the way, I'm taking Bryce Young, just because we've seen recent play from him that I'll ride from the perspective of they're playing Chicago.
I had not seen this, but Dan Wetzel has posted the entire letter from Michigan.
Well, and he's got snippet of what I was getting from Ward Manuel was that. Yeah, it's long.
Yeah.
Which we can dive into. But again, it sounds like they're going to wait potentially till next week. That's the other report that's out there, the Big Ten in response.
Well, maybe that 2-game suspension will happen starting next week.
Time for NFL Eliminator. I was fortunate enough this week to have the number 1 pick in Week 10, and I'm taking the Cowboys over the Giants, Davey. And
smart. 16.5 points.
Yep, and you had the second pick, or Chad did?
Chad did.
Chad, I took Dallas off the board. You went Seattle.
I feel like I made a mistake earlier this year by picking against the Commanders in one of the games. Okay. But you know what? I'm going to do it again. Seahawks.
Seattle does what New England couldn't do, is what you're saying.
Was that it? Did I pick I don't think I picked New England. Well, not in the last week. I'm saying early in the year I picked someone to beat the Commanders, and the Commanders upset them, I think. Give me the Seahawks at home to beat the Commanders.
I'm going to take the Bills. I know they've not been playing well as of late, but if I'm looking at this game, I know Denver's coming off a bye, but if the Bills lose, they're 500. This Bills team is too talented to just be 500. So
I agree.
I am confident that Josh Allen and company will be able to get it done at home.
At what point do we sell on the Bills? Because I keep buying into they should be better than this. They're better than this. And they continue to prove me wrong on that. They're not better than that. But Denver's not the team to go on the road and win, are they? They're 3-5. No, they're not. There's your answer.
I mean, they're at least healthy. That's the one thing they got going for them right
Buffalo,
now.
by the way, they've got they have Denver and then the Jets. They need 2 wins here because they follow that up with trips to Kansas City and Philadelphia over that 4-game stretch. So they need the 2 wins. And those 2 games against the Jets and the Broncos are over a 5-day or 6-day stretch. Back at it tomorrow. Join us for the Friday edition, 3 o'clock Eastern, right here on OutKick.